Chapter 557. There were many types of cavalry, but there was no detailed division of troops in this era. The types of troops were very simple. For example, most of the cavalry in the north borderline were light cavalry. They lacked mineral veins, so the armor of the soldiers was naturally not made of copper and iron. It was all woven with special rattan. This was similar to their ancestors, the Qiangwu tribe. The rattan armor of the Qiangwu tribe was repeatedly soaked in oil and supplemented with special craftsmanship. It was very tough and had a good defense. The key was that it was light. However, looking at the outcome of the Qiangwu tribe, hundreds of thousands of cavalrymen were burned to death by Prime Minister Huangfu. The three tribes of the north borderline learned a lesson from their ancestors and changed the craftsmanship of rattan armor. It seemed that they were not afraid of fire anymore. The situation of the infantry of the north borderline was similar to that of the cavalry. They wore rattan armor and held broadswords or spears. As for the division of troops and cooperation in battle, oh, was there such a thing? Jiang Pingji had fought with the Tsing-Yi army so far. The opponents were all unarmored soldiers. Their combat power was less than 5%. The elite troops and infantry of the north borderline were not comparable to the third-rate troops like the Tsing-Yi army. Their numbers alone were enough to scare people. To deal with such an enemy, she naturally had to show a serious attitude and let them see the art of war. Therefore, it was very important to classify the troops. It would be a nightmare for a single troop type to encounter a troop type that could restrain it. Jiang Pingji explained her idea. She was prepared to divide the troops under her into different troops and carry out targeted training. Feng Jin said, "Time is too tight. We don't have enough manpower. I'm afraid it will be difficult. No matter how difficult it is, we have to give it a try. Otherwise, we can only sit and wait for death." If the north borderline sent out troops, they would definitely need time to prepare. Jiang Pingji could seize the time to train the new troops. In ancient times, many men were recruited into the military camp. After a few days of training, they could be pulled to the battlefield. However, the combat power and quality of those soldiers were not good. The training period for the new troops recruited by Jiang Pingji was at least half a year. The training time was concentrated in winter and summer. The harsh weather could better temper one's will and body. As for spring and autumn, they helped with the spring plowing in spring, helped with the autumn harvest in autumn, and continued training in their free time. Anyway, they could not stop. When he entered Jiang Pingji's military camp, he was given training periods throughout the year. He was only allowed 1 day off every month. With this kind of training, the soldiers could definitely be considered as elite soldiers. Not to mention that most of them had participated in more than one battle. Their combat experience and quality were far stronger than those fresh recruits. They were not people who could be compared to the miscellaneous soldiers who were here to make up the numbers. They could easily take on 5 of them at once. Almost the next day, the news of Anyaina's sudden death spread to the other 3 districts of Fengyi County. When Qiguan Rang received the news, the sky was dark. He was working on documents with an oil lamp. He was so sleepy that his eyelids were drooping. When he heard the news, it was as if a bolt of lightning had struck him from head to toe. He was so shocked that he immediately woke up. Su Ke's reaction was almost the same. He dropped the work at hand, wrote a letter, and sent it to Xiangyang district overnight. The only ones who were calm and composed were Wei Ci and Yang Si of Qingan district. To be precise, there was only Wei Ci. Yang Si asked, "Why aren't you anxious? The north borderline has the ambition of wolves. When they send their troops this time, their military strength will definitely not be weak. How can the military strength of Chongzhou withstand their iron hooves? Once the borders are invaded, I'm afraid Dongqing will follow the same path as Nanxing. I'm afraid your lord's head will be in danger. Yang Si did not care who would be the emperor of Dongqing, but it definitely could not be the foreign tribes of the north borderline. Wei Ci was not anxious. Instead, he laughed. Don't worry, don't worry. The north borderline probably won't be able to attack this time. They still have a head full of lawsuits. Yang Si was surprised and hurriedly asked him, "You're such a torturous fox. If you have something to say, just say it. Aren't you afraid of being beaten up? Tell me in detail, why can't the north borderline attack this time? They've been coveting Dongqing for a long time. Now that the war in the north is endless and the war in the south is incessant, this is the best time for the north borderline to send their troops south. Could it be that the three tribes of the north borderline are in internal strife?" Wei Ci shook his head. The current king of the north borderline is extremely dignified. He's in his prime and has strong methods of ruling. He's already unified the forces of the north borderline since he became the king. Before he's in his twilight years or dies, the internal affairs of the north borderline won't be chaotic. Yang Si did not understand. If there was no internal strife in the north borderline, why couldn't they attack the south? Wei Ci said, "Buddha says, it can't be said." Yang Si said angrily, "Nonsense. You're just asking for a beating." He had made a bad friend by mistake. Wei Ci had already sent a letter to Xiangyang district regarding this issue. Others did not understand, but he believed that Jiang Pingji would definitely believe his words. Qiguan Rang, Su Ku, and Wei Ci's letters arrived almost one after another. The three messengers rushed over on horseback overnight. Jiang Pingji tore open the seal and took out the neatly folded letter inside. She first read Qiguan Rang's letter, which arrived first, then Su Ku's, and finally Wei Ci's. Unlike the previous two who asked about countermeasures, Wei Ci's letter contained only a few words. It was these few words that made Jiang Pingji's brows relax. Her eyes were filled with joy. At the beginning of the 11th month of the 20th year of Tianwu, there was a horse plague in the north borderline. The war horses contracted the disease and died suddenly. She read the letter, took a flint, and burned it to ashes. If that's the case, it looks like I'll have to ask Uncle Gu to fish for the last sum of money in the north borderline. Fish harder. Her eyes seemed to sparkle. She spread out a piece of paper, ground it, picked up a brush, and wrote a letter. "Guards, call the chief supervisor of the brick kiln here. I have something important to discuss with him." Among the armies of the three tribes in the north borderline, the ratio of infantry to cavalry had reached a ratio of 1 to 2. If a large number of war horses contracted the disease and died, it was tantamount to cutting off their right-hand men. They would not be able to recover their peak combat power in the next few years, let alone go south. This bought a lot of time for Jiang Pingji to grow. Previously, she felt that there was not enough time, but now she was slightly relieved. However, she did not completely believe the contents of the letter. It was not because she suspected Wei Ci, but because of the butterfly effect. Who knew if the horse plague in the north borderline would occur regularly? Perhaps it was swallowed by the butterfly's wings, or perhaps time had moved backward. Before it was completely confirmed, Jiang Pingji would not let down her guard. She still had to make preparations. However, regardless of whether the north borderline had the ability to send troops south, the business there would not last long. Jiang Pingji planned to fish for the last sum of money and swindle millions of strings of coins. The supervisor of the brick kiln rushed over overnight. Jiang Pingji ordered him to open the brick kiln again and fire a large batch of exquisite glassware. Previously, when she swindled the north borderline, the amount of glassware fired was limited, and it was sold slowly, creating an illusion that glass was very valuable. Almost every noble in the north borderline had a glass tea set as a fashion. Those noble ladies in the north borderline liked to collect glass jewelry. Wearing a set of glass would make them look good and make them the focus of banquets. More noble ladies could not buy it even if they had the money. Now that Dongqing and the north borderline were about to go to war, Jiang Pingji planned to make a fortune before the relationship broke down. Chapter 558. In order to protect the secret of the glass to the greatest extent, the vicinity of the brick kiln was heavily guarded. Everyone who worked in the kiln was strictly monitored. Jiang Pingji also had a detailed grasp of their family members and the recent flow of money. Of course, as compensation, all the craftsmen who worked in the kiln could get a generous monthly salary. The old and young in the family could also get easier jobs. Children of the right age had the priority to enter the college to receive education. Under multiple measures, the secret of the glass was well protected. Every firing was extremely confidential. The fired glass had to be registered, and the defective products had to be strictly destroyed. In order to whet the appetite of the noble ladies of the northern borderline, the quantity of the previous firing was relatively small. There were no more than 100 sets scattered. Now, in order to cheat the northern borderline of the last sum of money, Jiang Pingji ordered people to fire in large quantities. They worked day and night. The craftsman of the brick kiln was sweating profusely at the desperate effort. He was afraid that he would receive the wrong order while he was still asleep. By the time Gu Axian arrived with the caravan, Jiang Pingji had already fired thousands of sets of glassware. Many of them were exquisite glass jewelry. Even though Gu Axian knew that these things were not worth much, when they were placed together, his heart could not take it. Gu Axian hurriedly asked, "Young master, what are you doing?" Glass did not cost much, but it could be sold at a sky-high price. It should be sold slowly and strive to maximize the profit. Once this thing became widespread, it would not be worth much. Jiang Pingji said to Gu Axian, "Uncle Gu, don't worry. Have you heard about the sudden death of the princess of the northern borderline, Anyina? Now that the royal family of Dongqing has occupied Qinzhou, Prince Changshu has led the troops to besiege them. The two are in a stalemate. Now that the princess of the northern borderline has died, I'm worried that the northern borderline will use this as an excuse to attack Dongqing. Even if they don't fight, in your opinion, will Prince Changshu collude with the northern borderline?" Gu Axian could not help but fall into deep thought. He was a big merchant who did business in the north and south. Naturally, he was well informed. He knew about the sudden death of the princess of the northern borderline. Gu Axian asked, "Young master, do you think that once the war breaks out in the northern borderline, it will be difficult to do business?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "If the north borderline starts a war with Dongqing, it will definitely involve the entire country. Even if the noble ladies covet and want to buy a luxury item like glass, I reckon they will have to think twice. What's more, there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. I'm just afraid that if they find out about the secret of the glass, Uncle Gu, you'll have to pay for it." In the entire north borderline, only Gu Axian's treasure house sold glass. If they found out that glass was worthless, let alone something that belonged to the heavenly palace, they would inevitably fly into a rage out of humiliation and implicate Gu Axian. This was not what Jiang Pingji wanted to see. Gu Axian frowned and probed, "So, little boss intends to make one last deal. Get rich before the war at the northern borderline." Jiang Pingji did not tell Gu Axian about the horse plague. Apart from her and Wei Ci, no one else would know about it. If there really was a horse plague, this last deal would probably cause a certain blow to the economy of the northern borderline. The more she earned, the more unlucky the northern borderline would be, and the longer it would take for them to completely recover. These thoughts flashed through her mind. She nodded and said, "Yes, that's what I'm thinking. However, if all the glass is dumped in the northern borderline, we won't be able to consume it in a short time. This is also very risky. So, I want to ask Uncle Gu to sell a portion of it to Zhongzhou and other countries. As for the business at the northern borderline, after selling this deal, withdraw as soon as possible. I don't know if this will have any impact on the businesses under Uncle Gu's name. The businesses were all managed by Gu Axian. He was the expert. Jiang Pingji, as an outsider, had to listen to the opinions of the experts. Gu Axian smiled and said, "Little boss, you don't have to be so polite. The business at the northern borderline isn't very prosperous, especially in recent years. The money we earn is getting less and less. It's indeed time to change places. It's a good idea to take this opportunity to stop." The northern borderline was getting more and more malice from Dongqing. Naturally, the businesses of the merchants were getting more and more difficult. If not for Gu Xian's wide connections in the northern borderline and the ladies who liked to take care of his business, the treasure house would probably have closed down long ago. Gu Xian was not the least bit unwilling to blackmail the northern borderline and pack up and leave. He carefully selected a batch of glass. The quality was similar to or slightly better than the glass he had sold previously. There were more than 2,000 sets. These are all sold to the northern borderline. If we go through the normal sales route, we definitely won't be able to finish them all. If we want to get rid of them quickly, the black market is a good way to dispose of stolen goods. However, I'm afraid the price can't be as high as before. If the other party lowers the price, it has to be at least 50% or more. When he said the last sentence, even though Gu Axian was used to seeing big scenes, he still couldn't help but feel his heart ache. There were more than 2,000 sets of glass. If they were sold slowly according to the previous price, they could earn at least 140 million strings of coins. What kind of concept was that? The national treasury of Dongqing in a normal year was only 150 million strings of coins. This was under the situation where there were no disasters in the country. If there were floods, droughts, earthquakes or famine from time to time, the national treasury's annual revenue would be less than 90 million strings of coins. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes and said, "Uncle Gu, you can do it according to your own ideas. It's fine as long as you can get rid of them in the shortest time possible. You can exchange all these glass for silver or sheepskin. I don't care if you earn less. Without the northern borderline, we still have the 4 factions of Nanman to cheat. The faraway Zhongzhou, Beiyuan, Xichang and even the southern mainland of Dongqing. They are all markets. We don't have to worry about not having a place to earn money. We can only earn more money in the future if we are willing to make a small profit." Gu Axian couldn't help but smile at Jiang Pingji's words. He felt more confident. "Young master, please rest assured. Your servant will definitely not disappoint you." Gu Axian solemnly bowed. In the past, he was grateful for Gu Min's appreciation of him. Now, he was convinced by Jiang Pingji's trust and generosity. He sighed in his heart. They were indeed mother and daughter. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something and instructed him. "Uncle Gu, after this business, you don't have to buy any more horses." Gu Axian was surprised. "Young master, why is that?" The horse farms in Dongqing were all in Sang Prefecture. They had almost become the Meng's property. The previous generation of the Lu and Mengs were somewhat despicable. It was basically impossible to buy good war horses from them. Even if it was possible, the money spent was not something Jiang Pingji could afford. Chapter 559. So it was for his own good. Gu Xian's heart warmed and a warm expression appeared on his face. Young master is thoughtful. If that's the case, I won't buy horses this time. I'll try my best to buy sheepskin and wool. Jiang Pingji looked calm on the surface, but she felt slightly awkward. She said it nicely, but it was not because of that. She was just afraid that the source of the horse plague would spread to Dongqing. However, she could not tell Gu Axayan about the horse plague, so she could only use other reasons to avoid it. Jiang Pingji teased him with a smile. 3,000 horses are enough for now. If I buy another batch, I'm afraid my family business won't be able to support them. War horses were different from ordinary horses. They ate better food and needed more meticulous care. The consumption was also more terrifying. Gu Axian exposed her with a smile. I believe other people's cries of poverty. Young master, aren't you fooling people by saying you're poor? Over the past half a year, Jiang Pingji had cheated a lot of money from the fools in the north borderline. It was a total of more than 5 million strings of coins. Gu Axian took all the glass away and quietly left Xiangyang district. After that, the firing of glass stopped. The brick kiln resumed its boring life of firing bricks every day. This year's summer was exceptionally long. The drought lasted until mid-September. There was not a single drop of rain. It would be the autumn harvest in half a month, but the weather was still the same. Even Jiang Pingji was a little worried. Those who knew her would not offend her at such a time because she would be very irritable. Unfortunately, someone was blind. After approving documents for a whole night, Jiang Pingji sprawled out on the pile of bamboo slips and took a nap. Familiar footsteps came from outside. My lord, something bad has happened. The voice was like thunder. Not only did it wake Jiang Pingji up, but the audience in the streaming room was also shocked. Jiang Pingji opened her eyes and hooked a nearby table with her feet. Then she sat up and leaned against it. She looked at Dian Yen in front of her. Her eyelids were still a little sore. What happened? Dian Yen was a recruit who had an outstanding performance in the previous battle. Jiang Pingji promoted him to a centurion of the recruit camp and transferred him to Qingan district to protect Wei Xi. Her reason was that her advisor's appearance was too unsafe. She could be at ease if Dian Yen protected Wei Xi. Dian Yen had just gone to Qingan district but was sent back by Wei Xi. Good steel should be used on the blade's edge. He was very safe in Qingan district. Why waste a valiant general to protect him? Therefore, Dian Yen had now become the head of Jiang Pingji's guards. Dian Yen caught his breath. There are about 100 people outside the city. They claim to be the prefect of Fengyi County. They represent the prefect to supervise the counties and villages and announce government decrees. Jiang Pingji was stunned. What? What's that? She was still dizzy from exhaustion, but the viewers in the live broadcast room were very awake. They didn't understand what the term inspection deputy of the prefect meant, but they understood the term commander-in-chief. Zhang Fei was the one who beat the inspection deputy of prefect. Mingming's little white rabbit, damn, the streamer is going to live stream beating the deputy of the prefect. Ye Qingzhou, speaking of the inspection deputy of the prefect, I can't help but think of the inspection deputy of the prefect who was beaten to death by Zhang Fei in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The scene of him whipping the inspection deputy of the prefect was super satisfying. Streamer, do you think the inspection deputy of the prefect and the inspection deputy of the prefect are the same? Kanglin Feishue, no, didn't someone say that Liu Bei was the one who beat up the inspection deputy of the prefect in Three Kingdoms? Zhang Fei was the scapegoat. Vegetarian number, Zhang Fei was a fair-skinned young man with excellent calligraphy, but he was described as a black-skinned burly man and a hothead in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen in the live broadcast room. The various inspection deputy of the prefect made her dizzy. She rubbed the space between her eyebrows and said, the inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief of Fengyi County for an inspection. Dian Yen said with an ugly expression, yes, that's what that group of people said. According to the official position, Jiang Pingji was just a small district magistrate. At most, she was in charge of the affairs of Xiangyang district. There was also a county chief above her. Logically speaking, she had no right to extend her hands into the other 3 counties. But now, the entire Fingyi County belonged to her, and troops were stationed everywhere. She was not the county chief, but she was better than the county chief. Who the hell was that inspection deputy of the prefect? Jiang Pingji frowned. She was rather displeased, but she said, send someone to welcome him and test his intentions. Whether it was Xiangyang district, Qingan district, Maolin district or Jiaoping district, when they fell into the hands of the Tsing-Yi army, she did not see any local military forces in Fingyi County, nor did she see any effective resistance. The Tsing-Yi army relied on overwhelming numbers to break into the cities and wreak havoc in the villages. Now she was about to tidy up Fingyi County, and the wastelands that were cultivated in Xiangyang district would be ready to harvest in about half a month. At this time, an inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief appeared. Did he think she was as easy to fool as a 3-year-old child? Dian Yen answered, yes. The so-called inspection deputy of the prefect was actually the inspection deputy of the prefect, an important official in each county. He supervised the counties on behalf of the county chief, and announced government decrees and justice. Although his position was low, the authority he held was not light. He conveyed religious orders, supervised subordinates, examined cases and prisons, and investigated illegal acts. He did everything he could. Even if Dian Yen did not investigate, Jiang Pingji could guess the inspection deputy of the prefect's intentions. The audience in the streaming room were not stupid. What could a minor official who came to inspect on behalf of his immediate superior be doing at this time? Zhongfei Yingxingchen, F***ck, these people are here to pick the ready-made fruit. Miyuzi, the streamer is the district magistrate of Xiangyang district appointed by the emperor. The inspection deputy of the prefect can't do anything to the streamer. At most, he can be picky and deliberately make things difficult for the streamer. However, I'm afraid that the streamer's Maolin district, Jiaoping district and Qingan district will have to be handed over. And Zhanghuan, F***ck, it can't be. Where were these people when the Tsing-Yi army was ravaging the people? Now that the streamer has used her own troops to recover the other 3 districts, King inspection deputy of the prefect sent by the county chief jumped out. How shameless! Lu Siji Lianming, don't you know the streamer's character? Once it's in her hands, no one can covet it. If the inspection deputy of the prefect came to go through the formalities, he should be able to leave Xiangyang district safely. If he had ulterior motives, he would be beheaded. In the Romance of the 3 Kingdoms, Zhang Fei beat the inspection deputy of the prefect in a drunken rage, but at least no one died. If someone died, Liu Bei would not be able to bear the consequences. However, Jiang Pingji had 20,000 troops in her hands. Most of these 20,000 troops were veterans who had been on the battlefield and killed people. The newly recruited soldiers had also been trained for a whole summer. How could their combat qualities be compared to those ordinary soldiers who were born from the grassroots? If the inspection deputy of the prefect was blind and really made things difficult for Jiang Pingji and asked her to hand over the other 3 districts, if she was in a bad mood, someone would definitely die. Wan Buffa Gaofi, bring a stool over and sit in the front row to watch the show. I'll bet a spicy strip that the inspection deputy of the prefect will be done for. Qiu Zhaizhao Zhongguaguipu, I hope he has some sense and doesn't do anything stupid. I feel that the streamer has been in a particularly bad mood these few days. Chapter 560. The district magistrate was just a small official, and if the inspection deputy of the prefect went back and said a few bad things about him to the county chief, he would be in serious trouble. However, this was only for ordinary district magistrates. Was Jiang Pingji an ordinary district magistrate? The sun was blazing in the sky, and the air was extremely stuffy. The inspection deputy of the prefect and his entourage had been waiting outside the city for 2 whole hours, and they were sweating profusely from the heat. The plump inspection deputy of the prefect was even more disheveled. In order to take Jiang Pingji down a notch, he had put on a full set of clothes. Even with a manservant fanning him, he still felt extremely hot, and sweat kept seeping out of his pores, drenching his inner shirt. The people outside were sallow and emaciated, but his face was as plump as a full moon, with white and tender fat piled on his face. There was a hint of malice in his eyes, and his face was full of impatience and irritation, making him look unapproachable. The people lining up to enter the city would occasionally glance at them, lowering their heads and whispering to each other. Where did these officials come from? They're dressed in rich clothes. The middle-aged man beside him said, "It's said that they're the inspection deputy of the prefect from above. They're not good people." The inspection deputy of the prefect's position was light and powerful, and he often used his position to ask for bribes from his subordinates. Many people had no choice but to feign civility with him and secretly bribe him in order to keep their lowly positions. The more greedy inspection deputy of the prefect would even instruct others to exploit the villagers. The drought in the north and the fight between the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group had affected the spring plowing and autumn harvest for the past 2 years. Those who were slightly wealthier were already starving, but the inspection deputy of the prefect was still smooth and had a ruddy complexion, and he was as heavy as 2 adult men. It was ridiculous to say that he was incorruptible. How much salary could an inspection deputy of the prefect earn if he did not have extra income? The people laughed. Why were they chased aside and not allowed to enter the city? The middle-aged man clicked his tongue and said sarcastically, "It's not that they don't want to enter the city, they're probably blocked from entering the city. I really hope that the sun is hotter today, so that these corrupt officials and their lackeys die." Which time has the inspection deputy of the prefect not peeled off a layer of oil from everyone? One of them said proudly, "Our district magistrate is different from those vermin of the past. If this inspection deputy of the prefect dares to mess around, I'll definitely break his legs." A few commoners discussed in whispers, occasionally glancing at the inspection deputy of prefect who kept raising his hand to wipe his sweat. On the other side, the inspection deputy of the prefect was already impatient from waiting. He urged his subordinates to hurry up again while thinking about how to punish Jiang Pingji. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion at the city gate. The citizens who were queuing up to enter the city spontaneously made way. The inspection deputy of the prefect tried his best to stretch his neck, trying to see what was happening over there. His neck was also full of fat, and above his shoulders was a huge head. There was no neck at all. After a long while, Dian Yan led hundreds of tall soldiers armed with swords and spears forward. The blades were snow-white and sharp, giving people an inexplicable chill. Dian Yan's figure was tall and muscular, his complexion dark. Even though he was dressed neatly, he still exuded the aura of a bandit. "You are the inspection deputy of the prefect?" The deputy of the prefect was infuriated. Where did this black-faced burly man come from? How dare he be so rude to him? The inspection deputy of the prefect had wanted to display his authority as an official, but when he saw the broadsword hanging from Dian Yan's waist and the neat rows of soldiers behind him, his eyelids twitched subconsciously. Exactly. He had arrived outside the city 2 hours ago. He had thought that it wouldn't be long before the district magistrate would come out to greet him in fear and trepidation. He did not expect the district magistrate to leave him hanging for 2 hours. Now that he had finally arrived, he came with such a lineup. It was extremely rude. "I wonder what instructions do you have for me this time?" Dian Yan asked the inspection deputy of the prefect without batting an eyelid, as if he was interrogating a criminal. The inspection deputy of the prefect laughed angrily. I heard that the district magistrate of Xiangyang district disregarded the laws of Dongqing and used his private troops without authorization to oppress the citizens of the other 3 districts in Fengyi County. As the inspection deputy of the prefect, I have the duty of patrolling and supervising. I followed the county chief's order to thoroughly investigate this matter and see if the district magistrate has any disloyal intentions. That was a serious matter. Dian Yen secretly frowned. He knew that the inspection deputy of the prefect was up to no good, but he did not expect him to be so shameless as to directly threaten him. My lord has always served the country wholeheartedly. When has he ever had any disloyal intentions? The Tsingyi army has wreaked havoc in Fengyi County. If my lord had not taken pity on the citizens and dispatched troops to drive the Tsingyi army out, would the citizens of the other 3 districts have such peaceful days? This sentiment is clear to the sun and the moon. Dian Yen said, since the inspection deputy of the prefect has been ordered to thoroughly investigate this matter, I hope that you can carry it out impartially and prove my lord's innocence. The inspection deputy of the prefect felt a little better. It was good that he knew to be afraid. He knew that Lu Shi was Lu Shi's son, but so what? The young boy was ignorant, and no matter how forceful Lu Shi was, he could not do anything. It was Lu Shi's fault. As a district magistrate of Xiangyang district, how could she be qualified to mobilize troops to recover the other 3 districts? However, the inspection deputy of the prefect soon realized that something was wrong. More than 100 people were welcomed into the city. The prosperous scene on both sides of the street surprised him, followed by greed and evil thoughts. He had been the inspection deputy of the prefect for many years, but he had never seen a district that was so well governed. There were countless refugees outside, but only this place was bustling and prosperous, like a scene of prosperity. He was not impressed by Jiang Pingji's governance ability. Instead, he was thinking about how much he could extort. How could Lu Shi's son be short of money? Such emotions did not last long. He was drenched in a cold sweat when he realized that there was a team of soldiers standing on both sides of the street with swords and spears in their hands. All of them stood straight, their white blades gleaming with a cold light, and their eyes fell on him in unison. Even if the inspection deputy of the prefect was not very knowledgeable, he could still feel a cold aura. He asked with a slightly pale face, "These are," Dian Yen said, reporting to the inspection deputy of the prefect, "These are the private troops under my lord." All of them. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart skipped a beat and his scalp went numb. He did not dare to think about how many soldiers there were in the city. Dian Yen sneered and pretended to be concerned. "Inspection deputy of the prefect, what's wrong with you? These soldiers are so mighty. District Magistrate Lu has trained his troops well." Dian Yen continued, "Exactly. All of these soldiers have been on the battlefield and killed the Tsingyi army. They are extremely brave. All of them have seen blood." The inspection deputy of the prefect broke out in a cold sweat. He finally understood why he felt that the air was strangely cold after entering the city. Damn, it was the murderous aura. If he had not been sitting in the open carriage, the inspection deputy of the prefect's legs would have turned to jelly and he would have collapsed. He had to mentally prepare himself not to be frightened by such a large lineup. No matter how powerful Lu Shi was, could he be more powerful than the law? If he did not want to be accused of treason, he must hand over Jiaoping District, Chang'an District, and Maolin District today. Thinking of this, the inspection deputy of the prefect felt a little more confident. At the entrance of the district headquarters, there were 2 guards standing on both sides of the gate, looking straight ahead. The inspection deputy of the prefect craned his neck, but did not see the person suspected to be Lu Shi. Why didn't he come out to welcome him? Dian Yen said, "Inspection deputy of the prefect, my lord is already waiting for you in the main hall." This attitude made the inspection deputy of the prefect, who was always flattered and worshipped wherever he went, extremely displeased, but he could not vent his dissatisfaction. He stepped on the stool of the sedan chair and got down. The guards behind him were about to follow, but the soldiers on both sides suddenly swarmed forward and captured all of them. The inspection deputy of the prefect's expression changed drastically, and his eyes widened in shock. "You want to rebel?" Dian Yen smiled and captured the guards on both sides of the inspection deputy of the prefect, removing the weapons in their hands. Chapter 561. The inspection deputy of the prefect's chest rose and fell rapidly, and sweat trickled down his chubby face. It looked greasy, and one could touch a handful of oil with just a touch. You dare. Do you think I will harm your county magistrate?" The inspection deputy of the prefect had already been scared out of his wits by the murderous aura of the 2 rows of soldiers, and now he felt extremely insecure. Now that his guards had been taken down and their weapons had been taken away, he felt like a salted fish on the chopping block who was struggling to catch his breath. He flapped his tail in an attempt to escape, sweating even more profusely. Dian Yen smiled and said, "Of course I'm not afraid. With your abilities, who can you hurt?" The inspection deputy of the prefect fell silent for a moment, feeling that he had been underestimated. Although Dian Yen believed that he would not harm Jiang Pingji, why did his words carry a hint of disdain? A salted fish was a salted fish. Apart from struggling a little, what else could it do? Dian Yen stretched out his hand, gesturing to invite the prefect to enter the district headquarters. "Deputy Prefect, this way, my lord has been waiting for you in the main hall for a long time." The inspection deputy of the prefect swallowed nervously. His inner shirt was already drenched in sweat and stuck to his skin, making him very uncomfortable. Striding forward with his strong legs, the inspection deputy of the prefect followed Dian Yen into the district headquarters. The deputy of the prefect thought that since Xiangyang district was so prosperous, the district headquarters should be extremely luxurious, but that was not the case. If Dian Yen hadn't said that this was the district headquarters, he would have suspected that he had run into the house of a destitute aristocratic family. There were no fake mountains or flowers in the garden, nor were there any pavilions, terraces, or pavilions. There was only a piece of empty land with a few bamboo clothes-drying racks placed beside it. Passing through the courtyard, he took a few more steps forward and bypassed the stone screen. The main hall with its door wide open came into view. The inspection deputy of the prefect squinted his eyes, trying hard to see the scene in the main hall clearly. Jiang Pingji had been waiting in the main hall for a while, secretly chatting with the audience in the streaming room, trying to guess what the deputy of the prefect would look like. When Dian Yen brought the person over, the live stream room was filled with wailing, shouting that they were blind and needed a good-looking face to please their eyes. The inspection deputy of the prefect was dressed neatly, but due to the hot and dry weather, his forehead, cheeks, and chubby neck were all sweating profusely. After sitting in the carriage for a long time, the hem of his clothes was slightly wrinkled, and his collar was slightly askew. He did not look very well. The viewers in the live streaming room were used to seeing all kinds of handsome men in ancient times. When they saw a man like the inspection deputy of the prefect, they all expressed that they were blind. "Chami Fei, host, are you sure you didn't go to the wrong place? Why did the actor playing second senior brother come here? Cat Demon Monarch, ha ha ha, the one above, why are you insulting second senior brother like that?" Second senior brother was also an awe-inspiring canopy marshal before he was reincarnated as a pig. He wasn't a pigman, all right. This inspection deputy of the prefect was a living pig demon in human form. If he were to really play the role of second senior brother who had been reincarnated as a pig by mistake, he wouldn't even need to wear the pig head and the big belly props. With a head full of fat intestines, he would be playing the role of second senior brother in person. Yun Jian Lu Yun, phew, I'm relieved. Finally, I see an ugly ancient man. Previously, when I was watching the live stream, I realized that almost none of the streamer's subordinates were ugly. I thought that ancient genes were better and modern genes had regressed. Now that I see the deputy of the prefect, I'm relieved. Xiao Santian, you mortals who judge a book by its cover. Like the streamer, I value the inner qualities more. I will never laugh at this guy just because he looks like a pig. Damn, who's stopping me? Can't you see there's a pig here? Don't steal my butcher knife. Guekai Guofengxio, #despise. The position of the inspection deputy of the prefect is light and powerful. It was a cushy job in ancient times. Those who can sit in this position for a long time are generally not simple. Look at the current situation in Dongqing, then look at the tonnage of this inspection deputy of the prefect. Do you think he's simple? Prime Minister Zhuge Liang, he's not simple, but there's a saying that goes, one man can defeat 10 men with great strength. No matter how scheming this inspection deputy of the prefect is, can he scare away the 3 counties in the hands of the streamer? If he doesn't do anything, he can still live. If he courts death, even Buddha can't save him. The audience in the live stream room made jokes and acted cute and funny, which made Jiang Pingji's mood improve a lot. She also found the inspection deputy of the prefect more pleasing to the eye. The inspection deputy of the prefect stepped into the main hall and saw a handsome young man who was no more than 16 or 17 years old sitting at the head of the table. His eyebrows reached his temples, his lips were as red as blood, and his youthful face had the unique vigor of a young man. The corners of his eyes were slightly tilted, and his moderately thick lips were tightly pursed, giving off an inexplicable sense of dominance. If he were facing other young men, the inspection deputy of the prefect would have long put on a posture, but after experiencing Dian Yan's intimidation, he was a little timid. After greeting him, Jiang Pingji's attitude towards him was lukewarm. The inspection deputy of the prefect put on a fake smile and said some nice words to liven up the atmosphere. However, Jiang Pingji was unmoved by force or persuasion, and her attitude did not soften at all. However, although her attitude was cold, she was not very aggressive, which made the inspection deputy of the prefect feel a little relieved. He remembered the purpose of his visit and asked sternly, I heard that District Magistrate Liu used his private troops to occupy 3 counties. According to his script, Jiang Pingji should deny it in fear and trepidation, and then both parties would wrangle. He would take the opportunity to extract some benefits, intimidate the young district magistrate, explain the general idea with righteous words, accept some bribes, and then report Lu Shi to the county chief. In this way, he could not only gain benefits from Lu Shi, but also claim credit in front of the county chief. Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? But, Jiang Pingji nodded honestly and said, yes, is there a problem, inspection deputy of the prefect? The inspection deputy of the prefect did not react and thought that she had denied it, so he said subconsciously, don't panic, District Magistrate Liu. I am under orders to inspect Xiangyang District. If these are just rumors spread by outsiders, I will definitely report it to the county chief impartially. You did not use your private troops. What? After talking for a long time, he finally realized something was wrong. Jiang Pingji smiled faintly and said, I used my private troops to occupy the other 3 counties. Do you have any more problems, inspection deputy of the prefect? The inspection deputy of the prefect's fat face trembled, and his fair skin gradually lost its color. An unprecedented sense of crisis rushed straight to his head. This doesn't make sense. He said in a trembling voice, is District Magistrate Liu trying to rebel? Jiang Pingji avoided the question and asked in return, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Do you have any evidence to say that I'm rebelling? The inspection deputy of the prefect had thought of all kinds of scenarios, but he had never thought about how he should deal with Jiang Pingji's shameless behavior. He forced himself to ask, isn't occupying the 3 counties and not returning them obvious evidence? The onlookers in the livestream room could see that the inspection deputy of the prefect was now an arrow at the end of its flight, so they were enjoying the show. Gue kaigwo fenxio. I think that in the script of the inspection deputy of the prefect, the streamer should be in fear and trepidation, instead of rebuking others so righteously. Alas, how am I supposed to continue acting if District Magistrate Liu doesn't follow the script? This came from the inspection deputy of the prefect, who was suffering in silence. Acatrice, I reckon that the inspection deputy of the prefect still wants to blackmail the streamer and accept bribes. Jiang Pingji chuckled. Can I say that the county chief is in cahoots with the Tsingyi army and is in cahoots with the Tsingyi army and is a traitor? Chapter 562. Don't use uncommon words. Ha 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 ha, I'm dying of laughter. I'm not convinced by anything, I'm only convinced by the streamer. Lazy otaku, there are always stupid mortals who want to die. Isn't it good to be alive? The fairy queen's crimson, the streamer's words are both threatening and cursing. If I were the county chief, I would have been too ashamed to face anyone. As the county chief, he couldn't protect the people under his rule, so he ran away to avoid the limelight when there was a disaster. Now that the streamer has taken back the place, driven away the bandits, and taken care of the territory in good order, now he wants to stand out and use his power to oppress others. Bah! My pig teammate, you can't say that, can you? These 3 districts do not belong to the streamer. After all, he is the county chief. The opposite god's rival, so what if he is the county chief? Is it still a hereditary system where the son inherits the father's business? Fingyi County does not belong to them. Where were they when the Tsingyi army attacked? Did they lead the people and soldiers to resist the foreign bandits? They did nothing, and no one knew where they had taken refuge. Now that they have settled down, they want to pick the fruits. Dream on. I support the streamer's criticism. Jiang Pingji thought that the county chief of Fingyi County had died in the disaster of war. As the audience in the live stream said, whoever had the ability to pick the fruits that she had cultivated was welcome to try. Sending an inspection deputy of the prefect who assumed the authority of a tiger to oppress others and snatch the 3 districts from her hands. Even a daydream was not that beautiful. The inspection deputy of the prefect only swallowed his anger after a long while and said with a livid face, how can the two be lumped together? District Magistrate Liu, don't try to change the topic. We are talking about your private mobilization of troops to occupy the 3 districts, not about the county chief's personal words and deeds, Jiang Pingji snorted contemptuously. Why can't they be lumped together? When the Tsingyi army attacked, the county chief did not appease the people and did not lead the people and soldiers to resist the foreign enemies. Instead, he took his family and money and fled in the night. What right does he have to say that I, Liu Shi, am in the wrong just because of this? The inspection deputy of the prefect reminded me of one thing. If this matter is written into a memorial and submitted to His Majesty, how will His Majesty decide? The inspection deputy of the prefect's face was livid and bloodless. Facing the pressure exerted by her, his fat body trembled involuntarily. Fleeing from the bandit army without putting up a fight was enough for the prefectural governor to lose his position. What was even more shameless was that the county chief wanted to take advantage of Jiang Pingji. He tried to snatch away her painstaking efforts and then claim the credit for driving away the Tsingyi army. He would write a lengthy memorial to the throne and claim credit in front of the emperor to pave his way to a higher position. How could such a small thought escape Jiang Pingji's eyes? The inspection deputy of the prefect stammered, District Magistrate Liu, you are threatening, Jiang Pingji said calmly, recovering the 3 districts is my credit. Even if I'm willing to hand over the 3 counties to your county governor, let me ask you a face-slapping question. How can he guard the 3 counties with that little bit of ability? If you don't have the ability, don't take on this job. The enemy can destroy a county in just 3 to 5 days, but if the people want to rebuild the county, it may take 3 to 5 years. Deputy of the prefect, do you understand this? She was just short of pointing at his nose and saying, you can't do it. How could the inspection deputy of the prefect keep his face after being questioned and mocked by a young man like this? In the past, when he was inspecting the villages and counties, which official did not flatter him? Now that he was no longer in the limelight, he was being ridiculed by a fledgling kid. One could imagine how big the gap was. The inspection deputy of the prefect looked at Jiang Pingji coldly. The anger in his heart suppressed his fear and he threatened her with a fake smile. In that case, you can go ahead and do it, District Magistrate Liu. To put it bluntly, officialdom is not a child's game. You can't rise to the top just because you have the ability. The county governor is giving you face. District Magistrate Liu, you'd better stop while you're ahead. If it weren't for the county governor's respect for your father, he would have sent a memorial to Qinzhou and sued you. It might even cost you your life. A mere district magistrate suing the county governor. Who did this kid think he was? Jiang Pingji snorted. She looked calm and was not intimidated by the harsh words of the inspection deputy of the prefect at all. She clapped her hands. The sound of her clapping was crisp and clear. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart suddenly tightened and he could not sit still. Outside the door, Dian Yen heard the sound and came in with a long box in his hands. The fat on the inspection deputy of the prefect's face squeezed his eyes into slits. He tried his best to widen his eyes, not daring to look away. What are you doing? Jiang Pingji said, I'm showing you a treasure. Treasure. The inspection deputy of the prefect's mind began to spin. Could it be that District Magistrate Liu was only acting tough on the surface, but he was actually frightened? If not, why did this person want to show him a treasure? At that moment, various guesses flashed through the inspection deputy of the prefect's mind. He saw Dian Yen respectfully place the long box in front of him. The black-faced, brawny man with a terrifying aura moved cautiously, which made the inspection deputy of the prefect even more convinced that there was a precious treasure inside. She was so rude to him just now, and now she wants to bribe him with a treasure. The inspection deputy of the prefect's heart skipped a beat, and he despised Jiang Pingji even more. Was he such an easy person to get rid of? As he thought about it, he reached out and opened the box. There was a long knife with unparalleled sharpness lying inside, and the reflection of light at that moment stung his eyes. The inspection deputy of the prefect silently looked up at Dian Yen, who was half squatting down, only to see that the black-faced, brawny man had already placed his hand on the handle of the knife, picked it up easily, and placed the blade against his own neck. The inspection deputy of the prefect was dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events, and he dared not move an inch. District Magistrate Liu, the inspection deputy of the prefect swallowed nervously, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. The oily sweat slid down his cheeks and flowed past his chin, wetting the collar of his shirt. His plump body trembled like a sieve, and he looked extremely pitiful. I think the head of the inspection deputy of the prefect is quite stout. Chop it off and hang it in front of the door. It should be able to exorcise evil spirits. Jiang Pingji asked Dian Yen. Dian Yan's face was cold as he waited for his lord's instructions. My head can't exorcise evil spirits, the inspection deputy of the prefect said pitifully, even changing the way he addressed himself. Jiang Pingji said, I'm a young man in the ways of officialdom, so of course I'm not as experienced and ruthless as you. But I'm clear about one thing. I have troops in my hands, but the county chief doesn't. Even if His Majesty backs him up, he still won't be able to take back the 3 districts, let alone defend them. Go back and make it clear to him. I respect him as the county chief, but if he doesn't. Given the situation in the north, it's normal for 1 or 2 county chiefs to die. The inspection deputy of the prefect was burning with rage, but his life was more important. He hurriedly said, "I understand, I'll definitely convey your message." How could he hide his thoughts from Jiang Pingji? She stood up and said to Dian Yan, "Treat this inspection deputy of the prefect well, and make sure he sees our sincerity." Dian Yan responded in a low, muffled voice, "Yes, my lord. Please rest assured, I will definitely make the inspection deputy of the prefect feel at home." The inspection deputy of the prefect drew a small wound on his neck with the long knife, and he wanted to cry but had no tears. Chapter 563. The most popular item in the northern borderline this year was the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace. What was the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace? To put it bluntly, it was glass with an opaque color and impurities that glowed with colorful light. Because Guaxian fabricated a noble origin for the glass, saying that the glass was a celestial item that descended with a golden phoenix, and every piece was beautiful, the glass had another noble name, colored glass of the Heavenly Palace, implying that it was a treasure from the Heavenly Palace. The first lady to buy the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace became the focus of the circle of noblewomen in the northern borderline. Wherever she went, other people's eyes followed her. They were all fascinated by the dragon and phoenix hairpins on her temples. She also became the object of jealousy of many noble ladies. Those noble ladies kept urging their servants to ask for information from the treasure house. They insisted on getting the same or even better glass hairpins. The hairpin was translucent, with a dragon and a phoenix entwined together. The scales of the dragon and the feathers of the phoenix were fine and lifelike. The phoenix spread its wings as if it was about to fly, and the handsome dragon looked like it was about to soar to the ninth heaven. A string of transparent beads was held in the mouth of the phoenix and the dragon, which was shining brightly under the light. Women could not resist such beautiful and shiny things, but there was no news from the treasure house. Facing so many jealous and hateful gazes, the lady enjoyed it very much. Thanks to her free publicity, the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace quickly became popular in the circle of noblewomen in the northern borderline. As a businessman, Guaxian whetted everyone's appetite, and then found an opportunity to launch new glass products. The glass tea sets sold very well, but the most popular was the jewelry, and each piece sold at a very high price. In the past year, Guaxian's treasure house had sold hundreds of pieces, and the profits were so great that it made people jealous. The merchants of the northern borderline also wanted to make this money, but they had no way to get such good things, and could only watch Guaxian make money. It could be said that in the past year, the glass had become the symbol of the status of the nobles in the northern borderline. Every family had at least one set, and they could not show their generosity at all. Which noblewoman did not wear one or two pieces of glass jewelry seemed to be too ashamed to go out and not dare to entertain guests. Among them, the most generous noblewoman was Wu Liba's wife. Her family ran a business, and her husband was a wise man, whom the king of the northern borderline relied heavily on. Every time the treasure house had a new product, she was always the first to get the news and contributed a lot of money. Among all the noblewomen of the northern borderline, she was the only one who had collected several sets of glass jewelry. Every time she went out to a banquet, she attracted the attention of most people. Full of heroic spirit. As the saying went, follow the example of your superiors. This saying was not only applicable in Dongqing, but also in the north borderline. Wu Liba's wife had a very high status in the circle of aristocratic ladies. They admired these colored glass of the Heavenly Palace. Naturally, those aristocratic ladies with slightly lower status also coveted them. However, they were not as wealthy as the other ladies. By the time they received news that the treasure house was stocking up, the items had already been bought. Things that couldn't be bought even if one had money could better reflect one's noble status. In order to satisfy the needs of these noble ladies, Gu Axan smiled bitterly and agreed to help them search. Only then did they give up. They waited, and waited, they waited anxiously, and finally, the news from the treasure house came. This was the largest in history. There were a total of 20 sets of colored glass of the Heavenly Palace jewelry that were in relatively perfect condition. This news caused waves of ripples in the circle of aristocratic ladies of the North Borderline. The treasure house was filled with carriages and servants from various mansions. Wu Liba's wife was still the vanguard. She generously spent 670,000 strings of coins to buy 2 of the most gorgeous and beautiful jewelry sets. The other ladies wanted to fight for it, but they weighed their own family assets. No matter what, they couldn't compare to the family's business. Therefore, they could only settle for the next best thing, which was to buy other jewelry. The treasure house was very discerning and respectfully offered a set. It was sent to the imperial harem of the North Borderline and given to the most honorable woman. The Empress was also very interesting. After receiving it, she dressed up and held a banquet to show off. For a time, from the top to the bottom, the aristocratic families of the North Borderline valued the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace. The only fly in the ointment was that this thing was fragile. But thinking about it, even fine jade would shatter if it fell to the ground. The colored glass of the Heavenly Palace should also be a jade stone from the sky. It was normal for it to shatter accidentally. Under such a trend, many businessmen coveted this thing to the extreme. They wanted nothing more than to replace the treasure house. The colored glass of the Heavenly Palace, in the black market of the North Borderline, was even more priceless. Doing business could easily earn millions of strings of coins. Who wouldn't be envious? Soon, their opportunity came. They used money to try to bribe the servants and stewards of the treasure house. After spending money and beauties, they finally relented after nearly a year. What? The head of a business in the North Borderline trembled. The wine in his hand almost spilled. He said in surprise, the number of pieces of the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace unearthed in May County wasn't just over 200, but over 2,000. Most of them are in the hands of that old fox, Gu Axan. The steward of the treasure house, who had been instigated to defect, nodded, but immediately revealed a resentful expression. That Gu Axan has made a lot of money, but he's very greedy. He only cares about filling his own pockets and doesn't care about my old partner at all. This time, if it weren't for your kindness, I'm afraid that my family would have been ruined. The steward of the treasure house sighed with a bitter expression. The head of the business in the North Borderline snickered in his heart. If he hadn't used a scheme to frame the steward's family, causing him to owe a huge debt, this fat fish probably wouldn't have taken the bait, and he wouldn't have been able to know such shocking news. This Gu Axan is really an old fox. The head of the business pretended to be surprised and asked, since he has so many goods, why does he keep hiding that he doesn't have any? The steward of the treasure house asked with a bitter smile, you're also a businessman. How can you not know that the rarer something is, the greater its value? The fewer things there are, the more people want it, and the higher the price they offer. Only then can the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace be sold at a good price. If they were all displayed at once, how could they sell so well? Gu Axan has used this method too many times, but there are still so many people rushing to give him money. Sigh. The steward of the treasure house sighed. The head of the business stroked his beard and smiled. Business is business. Speaking of businessmen, I quite admire Gu Axan. A businessman from Dongqing was able to gain a foothold in the North Borderline and have been doing business for so many years. It's indeed worth learning from his methods. People in the same trade are enemies. Seeing Gu Axan make a lot of money, who wouldn't be envious? The head of the business thought for a while. If he had so many colored glass of the Heavenly Palace, he would probably sell them as soon as possible. How could he be like Guaxian, patiently operating it and raising its value to the peak? Admittedly, Guaxian didn't sell much, but he did earn a lot of money. However, it was a pity that Guaxian did a good business and was good at managing his subordinates, but his ability to guard against thieves, tsk. Chapter 564. Look, didn't he smash a hole in the treasure house that was like an iron bucket and obtain information about the treasure house's lifeline? The treasure house manager's face was ashen. The head of the Northern Borderline Trading Company patted him on the shoulder and said, "Don't be discouraged, good days are still ahead. According to our previous discussion, you steal those colored glass of the Heavenly Palace and sell them to me at a discount of 30%. The money is yours." The treasure house manager was a little hesitant. "I betrayed the shopkeeper this time. I'm afraid he can't tolerate me." "Only 30%, the head of the trading company said. "Guaxian still has nearly 2,000 pieces of the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace. Do you know how huge a figure it is to sell all of them at 30%? Besides our trading company alliance, who can buy it all at once? The money you get will be far more than what Guaxian earns. All of this money will be yours in the future. It's like a pie falling from the sky. If you take it all for yourself, you'll be as rich as a country in the future." The treasure house manager was tempted. A look of hesitation and greed flashed across his face. This made the head of the trading company very satisfied. After a while, the treasure house manager gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, I agree. But I don't think I'll be alive to enjoy so much money." The head of the trading company smiled and said, "I can lend you people to escort you safely out of the northern borderline. But you want to buy slaves and horses, that won't do. Recently, the higher-ups have been very strict with these two businesses. You can only sell to the people of the northern borderline, not even to people of other countries." The treasure house manager said, "Then, can I buy sheepskin?" The head of the trading company heard that Guaxian often bought sheepskin from various families. He didn't buy a lot each time, but it added up to a huge amount. He pretended to be confused and said, "Sheepskin has a strong smell and can't be made into clothes. What business can I do with it?" The treasure house manager sneered and said, "Guaxian sold those sheepskin at a high price to the people of Nanxing and the barbarians of the 4 factions of Nanman. With these sheepskin, he made a huge sum of money last winter. This kind of beast who makes money from national disasters is not worth working with." The head of the trading company raised his eyebrows and sneered. "Business is business. As long as there is money to be made in business, who cares if it's national disasters?" The treasure house manager was convinced by the head of the trading company and nodded with an ashen face. The head of the trading firm said, "Don't worry about the sheepskin, I'll make sure to arrange it for you. As for sheepskin, which family doesn't have hundreds of them? You can easily find tens of thousands of them. Set a time and I'll get them for you. You can have as many as you want." The northern borderline herded horses and sheep, and every household raised many cows, sheep, and horses. The sheep would grow their wool crazily in the winter, so the trimmed wool was useless. They would even complain that it smelled too bad when used to make fire. Now that someone was buying it, even if the price was very low, it was better than nothing. It could be considered as an extra income for the people of the northern borderline. In order to resist foreign businesses, the royal court of the northern borderline established various trading companies according to the advice of the wise man, and each trading company formed an alliance with each other. It was impossible to swallow Guaxian's colored glass of the Heavenly Palace in one go with just one trading company, and they didn't have that much money either. Therefore, he had to unite the trading companies and buy this batch of goods together. The land of the northern borderline was not suitable for farming, but it was rich in minerals and produced all kinds of precious stones, gold, silver, jade, and spices. The value of these things was not even half of the value in Dongqing. In comparison, copper and iron were more valued than gold, silver, and jewelry. If they exchanged gold, silver, and jewelry for the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace, the trading company of the northern borderline would make a huge profit, and the final profit would be more than 9 times. In the face of such a huge temptation, it was better to do it sooner rather than later. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Gu Axian went to other countries to do business and was unable to take care of the northern borderline, the manager of the treasure house stole the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace in batches and sold it to the trading company of the northern borderline at a low price of 30%, in exchange for a large amount of gold, silver, jewelry, and sheepskin wool. The manager of the treasure house was also a scheming person, and he did things flawlessly. This made the head of the trading company sigh with emotion. As expected of a manager trained by Gu Axian, his style was just like him. It was a pity that when Gu Axian returned and saw the empty treasure house, he would vomit blood in anger. Thinking of that wonderful scene, the head of the trading company couldn't help but smile. In the end, the manager of the treasure house forged Gu Axian's warrant and dismissed the treasure house and its branch business in the northern borderline. He left the northern borderline with the old man of the treasure house, the gold, silver, jewelry, and hundreds of thousands of sheepskin wool, and headed in the direction of Nanxing country. Before leaving, the manager of the treasure house also secretly asked the head of the trading company if he could secretly sell some horses to him. The head of the trading company said, "Didn't I say before that the higher-ups are very strict with this business? Horses can't be sold." The manager of the treasure house said, "You also said that business is business. There is money to be made in this business, so why not do it?" The head of the trading company smiled and said nothing. The manager of the treasure house refused to give up and asked about the famous horses in the northern borderline. The head of the trading company was annoyed by the questions. He said, "If you want to buy horses, you can ask the horse merchants in Shalon country. They have just presented more than 10 Fergana horses to the imperial court. I heard that those horses are very expensive, even better than the best horses in the northern borderline. But it's a pity that along the way, 4 horses died of illness. Although the horses over there are expensive, they are indeed good horses." The manager of the treasure house asked in surprise, "What kind of place is Shalon country?" The head of the trading company said, "I don't know either, but that place is very far away. I heard that there are only spring and summer in a year, and it is very hot and dry. The people over there are all tan like charcoal. If it gets dark, you can't even see a person. Their brains are stupid, but their limbs are strong." The manager of the treasure house grunted and seemed to be a little tempted. The head of the trading company didn't mind connecting the two parties. The manager of the treasure house took the opportunity to see the Fergana horses from Shalon country. They were indeed extraordinary. "But, why, they don't look very energetic," the head of the trading company said with an indifferent expression. "I heard that they traveled for more than half a year. Even people can't stand it, let alone horses. They will be fine after resting for a while. If you want to buy horses, you can talk to the head of the trading company in Shalon country. If the price is right, he might sell you one." People also had problems with acclimatization, and horses were the same. They would be fine after resting for a while. It had always been like this, so the head of the trading company didn't care. The manager of the treasure house asked about the price and was scared off. The horses were good horses, but a top-grade Fergana horse cost 500,000 or 600,000 strings of coins. Who could afford it? Every year, the northern borderline would buy horses from Shalon country, not for people to ride, but to use the Fergana horses of Shalon country and the good warhorses of the local horse farms to breed high-quality warhorses. If that was the case, the price was actually not expensive. Seeing that the manager of the treasure house was scared off, the head of the trading company laughed secretly. Chapter 565. The manager of the treasure house hesitated. How many times could he see a horse of such high quality in his life? However, when he thought of the value of a Fergana horse as high as 500 to 600,000 strings of coins, he was scared off and shook his head like a rattle drum. This thing was too expensive, he couldn't afford it. It's not that I don't want to buy it, it's just that the price is really too expensive. It's not worth it, it's really not worth it. Seeing that he was so stingy, the head of the commercial firm despised him and laughed at the same time. Even if some people had money, they were at most just local tycoons. They didn't have great foresight and insight, and they didn't consider the big picture. Was a Fergana horse worth 500 to 600,000 strings of coins expensive? This price was indeed very expensive, but what if these Fergana horses were excellent stallions? Any horse farm that got such a high-quality Fergana horse could breed countless high-quality warhorses, and the value created in a few years would far exceed this price. The warhorses of the northern borderline were so sought after because of their persistent efforts to improve the horse's bloodline. With a large number of high-quality warhorses, the combat power of the northern borderline could improve so quickly. Therefore, in the eyes of the head of the commercial firm, the manager of the treasure house was really short-sighted and useless. With this judgment, the head of the commercial firm was more at ease with the manager of the treasure house. He was happy and blurted out, "I think you really like good horses. I have a few mixed-blood Fergana horses. Although they aren't as pure-blooded as Shalon, they've been carefully cultivated for 2 generations. They're of extremely good quality. Do you want to take a look? But I'll say this in advance. If you want to buy them, you can only buy one. Those good horses are all registered. If there are too few, it'll be hard to explain." The manager of the treasure house's heart trembled. Was he going to smuggle a fine horse to him? Of course, he had to agree to such a good thing. The northern borderline was vast and rich in high-quality horses. The imperial court kept a close eye on each horse farm. However, there would always be people who would take risks for the sake of profit. The horse that Lu Shi gave to Jiang Pingji was smuggled out. It was originally meant to be presented to the king of the northern borderline, but the officials under him intercepted it and sold it. The horse that they gave to the king was slightly inferior. Now that the situation was tense, good horses could not be bought and sold carelessly. Horses that could be bought and sold privately naturally had some tricks up their sleeves. For example, the owner of the horse farm would privately embezzle the money and report that the newborn foals had died from dystocia or had died prematurely. Then, he would raise them in private and sell them at a high price. The manager of the treasure house looked at the few fine horses that the head of the trading company was talking about. They were not very old, but one could already see their future glory. He swallowed nervously and obsessively. Compared to the Fergana horses, which had a thin head, a high neck, thin skin, fine hair, and appeared lean, the manager of the treasure house preferred the hybrid of the Fergana horses and the local horses of the northern borderline. It not only had the advantages of the Fergana horses, such as great strength, speed, and endurance, but it also had the advantages of the local horses, such as strong explosive power, strong weight-bearing, light footsteps, and strong physique. Which man wouldn't like it? The Fergana horses of Shalon were good in every way except for one thing, which was that they were slightly lean. However, after 2 generations of hybridization, the horses in front of him that had improved their bloodlines could be said to be real godly horses. The head of the trading company was very satisfied with the obsessive reaction of the manager of the treasure house. He said in a slightly proud tone, "Are you satisfied with what you see?" The manager of the treasure house nodded like pounding garlic and said obsequiously, "I'm satisfied, I can't be more satisfied. I've never seen such a handsome horse in my life. I really have to thank you this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the luck to see such a magnificent horse." The head of the trading company was very satisfied. He said, "If you like it, you can pick anyone. We're old friends, so I'll give you the best price." The manager of the treasure house didn't know much about horses, but he knew that if the dozen or so horses in front of him were not good, the head of the trading company wouldn't have valued them so much. Therefore, he didn't have to worry about the quality of the fine horses. He only needed to pick the best-looking one. Yes, he was a beauty lover. The color of these fine horses was very pure. Among a group of brown, brownish-red, brownish-yellow, and pure black horses, the manager of the treasure house saw the snow-white horse at first glance. There was not a trace of other colors on its body, and it had a light body and vigorous gait. It was a beauty among horses. What a beautiful little girl. I'll choose this one. The manager of the treasure house raised his hand and touched the mane of the horse. The horse snorted but didn't reject it. Its temperament was very docile. The head of the trading company was strangely silent for a moment. "This is a male." The manager of the treasure house, a male. He was surprised and asked, "Has this horse been gelded?" The head of the trading company said, "This horse hasn't been gelded yet." What was gelding? To put it bluntly, it was castration. Male warhorses were all castrated. They were the so-called geldings. These male horses were more docile and easy to tame. They also wouldn't go into estrus. After all, anything could happen on the battlefield. If a male horse went into estrus, who would be able to tame it? The horses used for riding were all gelded. Each horse farm would keep the best quality male horses as stud horses to breed excellent offspring. The expression of the manager of the treasure house became even more strange. He couldn't help but look at the horse. A gelding that hadn't been gelded could have such a good temper. The other party seemed to grin and laugh at his lack of knowledge. The head of the trading company said without hesitation, "This horse hasn't been gelded. Its temperament is volatile and it's not easy to tame. Do you want to change to another one?" The manager of the treasure house shook his head and said, "I like the color white. It's the only one here that's white, and it's so beautiful. I'll choose it." "Oh, as long as you like it." The manager of the treasure house left with the big white horse. The money was directly deducted from the smuggled, colored glass of the heavenly palace. At the end of September, the sky rained. The dry land in the north finally had rain to moisten it. On the day it rained, Dian Yen, the rough man, rushed to the government office with a face full of ecstasy to report the good news. My lord, it's raining. It's finally raining." Jiang Pingji raised her eyelids and put down the brush and ink in her hand. She got up and picked up the cloak beside her to put it on. "It's raining. Why are you so surprised?" Even so, Jiang Pingji's words still carried a faint smile. In this era, the heavens depended on what people ate. In the past, artificial rain could still be made, but now it couldn't. The autumn harvest was getting closer and closer, but the weather showed no signs of improving. The dug canals were gradually drying up. The people's hearts were wavering. Jiang Pingji was worried about how to appease the people, but she didn't expect the heavens to give her face. It started to rain without warning. At first, it was drizzling. Then it became raindrops the size of beans, falling with a pitter-patter. The people of Fengyi County were ecstatic. Every household took out their pots and pans to collect the water. The farmers who were worried about their fields were overjoyed. They shouted and rushed into the rain, laughing loudly. Chapter 566. The precious rain lasted for 2 days and 2 nights. It was not until the morning of the 3rd day that the rain gradually subsided. When the golden morning light pierced through the misty morning mist, the air was suffused with the fragrance of water vapor and soil. Seeing this, Jiang Pingji gradually felt relieved. Just in case, she brought Zhang Ping and the craftsmen of the carpentry workshop to inspect the canals and reservoirs. Only after making sure that the water was flowing smoothly did she feel slightly relieved. If there was a flood after the drought, it would be impossible to live on. The dried-up mountain stream had the sound of flowing water again. The leaves that had withered for a whole summer stretched their limbs and gradually regained their vitality. The rain has stopped, the pond in the courtyard was filled with clean and clear water again. Under Takshu's instructions, the maidservant released a few goldfish that were kept in the water tank and added some water plants. The maidservant, who had a slender waist and a delicate appearance, also had a joyful expression on her face. She looked innocent. After the rain, the weather gradually cooled down. The air also faded away from the previous stuffiness and heat. Taking a deep breath, the spleen and lungs also became a little more moist. Jiang Pingji changed into the new autumn clothes made by the maidservant. The material was slightly thicker than the fabric worn in the summer. Due to the influence of the integration of force, the genes of this body had been improved. At the age of 17, she was already taller than some adult men. If converted to the unit of length that the audience in the streaming room was used to, she was about 1.75 meters. Looking at this growth, it was estimated that she could grow a few more centimeters. In terms of the average height of men and women in this era, her height was quite rare. Lang Jun, you're awake. Takshu was the first to notice her gaze. She smiled and bowed to greet her. The other maidservants bowed one after another. A beautiful young girl and a gentleman in the streaming room were cheering. Jiang Pingji's mood also became a lot better. Yes. She nodded and said, I'm going to the government office. Rainwater hung on the branches and dripped down. Feng Jin, who had been worried about the drought, was also refreshed at this moment. Good morning, my lord. Feng Jin greeted her. After getting a reply, he continued with the matter at hand. Jiang Pingji flipped through the bamboo slips on her table and asked, Shihing still hasn't come to the government office today. Feng Jin asked, My lord, why are you looking for him? Zhang Ping was not good at government affairs, and he was also obsessed with all kinds of woodworking. He might not even come to the government office to take a roll call every 10 days or half a month. If he went to the carpentry workshop to arrest people, Zhang Ping would definitely be there. Jiang Pingji said, the rain was frighteningly heavy 2 days ago. I'm afraid there will be a flood. I plan to bring Shihing along to take a look. Many floods did not accumulate water because of heavy rain. Instead, it was because the drainage system under the city was not good enough and could not divert the water in time, resulting in excessive water accumulating in one place. When Jiang Pingji rebuilt Xiangyang district, she also considered the construction of the sewers. However, Xiangyang district was not big and the construction of the sewers was not complicated. When Xiangyang district was completed, the sewers were also completed. The rain 2 days ago was frighteningly heavy. She thought that Xiangyang district would be flooded. Fortunately, both the old and new sewer drainage systems were powerful. In addition to the few canals built before summer, the water flow was stabilized. Even the farmlands were not affected. He could not help but recall the scene 2 days ago when Jiang Pingji wore a straw raincoat and brought people to patrol. His heart warmed slightly. My lord sympathizes with the people. You are very kind. The two of them had not spoken much when the otaku handicraft expert, Zhang Ping, came over. He was dressed in brown and wore a bamboo hat on his head. He looked very down to earth. Where did he have the demeanor of a famous scholar? Jiang Pingji put down what she was doing and went out with Zhang Ping. The sewers of this era were very different from the sewers that the viewers in the streaming room knew. The modern sewers were more like underground passageways that discharged the city's domestic sewage and rainstorms and floods. However, for the manpower of this era, the amount of work required was huge and there were many drawbacks. Whoever built such as sewers would be a fool. Why did she say so? Firstly, the price-performance ratio was too low. The materials from ancient times could not satisfy such a difficult construction structure. Even if it could be built, the final cost of labor and materials would be too high. It was not realistic at all. Therefore, Jiang Pingji did not consider this at all. Secondly, the form of war in this era also determined that the sewers were not realistic. If the enemy sneaked into the city through the sewers and caught the defending general unprepared, who would be to blame then? This was no longer a trap. It was a trap for the people of the entire city. In fact, the so-called sewers were just ditches that covered the entire city. The drainage capacity was rather poor. During the rainy season, water would often accumulate. If it was even worse, it would be a torrential flood that would drown the entire city. After Jiang Pingji set up the brick kiln, she specially ordered the craftsmen to bake hollow pipes with a thick diameter. Every hollow pipe in the shape of a long tube could be inlaid with each other. The inspiration came from the mortise and tenon of house beams. Then, she ordered people to dig ditches in the main streets of Xiangyang district. Finally, the fired hollow pipes were buried in them. They were connected in series and connected to the drainage outlet. Such drainage pipes could be found all over Xiangyang district. If there was such a heavy rain in the past, Xiangyang district would have been knee-deep in the water. It was very different today. The roads were still fine. The two of them found a tea house and sat down. Jiang Pingji thought of the urgent letter she received yesterday. She couldn't help but laugh. I've already asked the other 3 districts to gather local materials and bake these hollow pipes. When it's really completed, the people of the 3 districts won't have to worry about their houses being flooded when they sleep. Apart from Xiangyang district, Jiaoping district, Maolin district and Qingan district were all drenched by the heavy rain. The water was knee-deep. Fortunately, the rain didn't last for too long. It would subside in another half a day. Zhang Ping said, "My lord, you've thought it through. It's better not to delay this matter. This summer, it hasn't rained at all. Now there's only a rainstorm. This is already very good. If it was in previous years, when the rain was abundant, I'm afraid Fengyi County would be flooded and the fields would suffer." Ever since he started working for Jiang Pingji, Zhang Ping never had a day to rest. However, he enjoyed it. He never thought that the Mahist craftsman's tricks could play such a big role. If they could specialize in this area and let the Mahist techniques permeate every aspect of the people's lives, their final status would not be any lower than that of the Confucians. In order to get through the rainy season next year, the drainage system must be done well. The drainage pipes weren't for war, but they were related to the people's quality of life. Naturally, Jiang Pingji attached great importance to them. The two of them talked in low voices. The people in the tea house also subconsciously kept their voices down. They didn't dare to disturb them. Because Jiang Pingji often appeared on the streets and alleys, she didn't put on the airs of a district magistrate. When she was bored, she would even help the older farmers with their farm work. There wasn't anyone in Xiangyang district who didn't know her. It was normal for her to bring her subordinates to go shopping and discuss political affairs. Chapter 567. The government office is flooded. The rain is too heavy. Yang Si tied a knot at the hem of his shirt, revealing his 2 bare calves soaking in the water. He moved the bamboo slips and documents to the cabinet for a long time. He was so tired that he was panting and could not straighten his back. Wei Ci sat on the 2 stacked tables and looked at him with a smile. "Jing Rong, you eat and drink all day without doing any work. Are you suffering now? Look at how many bamboo slips you've moved, but you're so tired that you can't straighten your back. This won't do. Yang Si was so tired that his forehead was sweating. Unfortunately, Wei Ci was still making sarcastic remarks. He could not help but glare at him fiercely. Don't be so arrogant, you fox. When this matter is over, I'll go far away and never see you again, you black-hearted fox. Yang Si and the boy's servant panted as they moved the bamboo slips. Wei Ci sat on the table to avoid the water. What was this? Unfortunately, Wei Ci was weak. If he was asked to do the hard work, he might fall into the water. Wei Ci lifted his sleeves to cover his lips and smiled. You can say this if you can walk away. He had boarded Her Majesty's pirate ship and still wanted to leave. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Yang Si's anger rose. He regretted coming to Qingan district for the umpteenth time. If he had known earlier, he would have stayed under Prince Changshuo's tent. It was not worth it to sell himself to Jiangpingji, Shoubapi, just for a few meals. You fox, if you don't restrain your nature, others will be so scared that they won't dare to come over. Yang Si knew that Wei Ci had sent letters to many of his good friends with the intention of recruiting them. But this was a trap. Once he jumped in, he could not get out. Wei Ci blinked and said innocently, Jing Rong, you don't have to worry about this. Looking at the time, the fat fish may have taken the bait. Yang Si was strangely silent for a while and asked, You mean the fat fish? So the friends that Wei Ci made were fat fish that could be tricked in his eyes. Wei Zixiao, doesn't your conscience hurt? What made his heart hurt was that he seemed to be one of the fat fish in Wei Ci's eyes. If he had not walked right into the trap, he might have received a recruitment letter from Wei Ci. Thinking of that scene, Yang Si felt that he was about to have a mental breakdown. He wished that he could throw Wei Ci into the water. You damned fox, see if I don't crush you to death today. I'm enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. Yang Si rolled up his sleeves and looked like he was going to fight Wei Ci to the death. Watching the two teachers bickering and fooling around, the errand boy felt extremely tired. When it came to hard work, his master had only helped a little. The heaviest work still fell on him. The drainage pipes in Qingan district had not been paved yet. The previous drainage ditches were broken and old. After 2 days of heavy rain, the entire city had turned into a vast ocean. Fortunately, the water was not deep. Yang Si led the people to drain the water urgently. By noon, the water in the city had basically been emptied. The situation in the other two counties was worse than Qingan district, but compared to before, the situation had improved a lot. This heavy rain alleviated the drought in the north. The dry and cracked farmland was soaked in a layer of water. The dry and hard soil also turned into soft silt. Yang Si and the others began to get busy. On one hand, they had to keep an eye on the construction of the houses in the city. On the other hand, they had to keep an eye on the burning of the hollow pipes. After the burning was done, they had to lead people to dig the ditches, drain the water in the ground, dry it, and then bury the hollow pipes. Because Qingan district was this year's experimental county for farming, the number of wastelands reclaimed was huge. The people still needed to work day and night. In addition to these trivial matters, they had to handle the resettlement of the refugees, the distribution of wastelands, the registration of personnel, the provision of porridge. All the trivial matters had to be handled. I really hate that I didn't give me more hands when I was born. These days, Yang Si was so busy that his eye sockets were sunken, his eye bags were dark, and his eyes were bloodshot. Even if the government office specially assigned a private chef for him, he could not be happy, because he was so damn tired that he did not even have time to eat. Wasn't this a trap? Yang Si said shakily, I'm going to write a letter and tell them, this is a trap, don't walk right into it, the originally calm and composed strategist was now as aggrieved as a child. Wei Xi smiled and said, "That's not right. The more people there are, the less work to be shared. If no one came, wouldn't he be the one who would be tired?" Yang Xi looked like he had nothing to live for. "The thing I regret the most in this life is getting to know you. If there's a next life, remember to stay far away." Wei Xi smiled faintly and said mischievously, "It's useless for me to stay far away. The main point is to avoid the Lord." Thinking about his previous life, in order not to be a burden to Yang Xi, the two of them had little contact in private. Did that mean that Yang Xi did less work? He was still so tired that he wanted to go on strike every day. Her Majesty was too ambitious and had too many things to do. She looked like she could not wait to finish the things that would take thousands of years in a few decades. Her Majesty was busy day and night. Which of the officials under her did not keep up with her bitterly? If they wanted to be free in their next life, they had to first open their eyes wide to see clearly where Her Majesty was and avoid her. Only then could they be free. Yang Xi was so choked that he could not breathe. After a while, he muttered, "Who do you think that fat fish is? Do I know him?" Everyone's circle of friends was different. Wei Xi's friends might not be Yang Xi's friends. Wei Xi said, "You may have heard of this person. His name is Feng Zhen. His courtesy name is Zhi. He is from Zhangzhou's Anshan County." Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Wasn't that Prince Changshuo's fief? According to Prince Changshuo's previous role as a virtuous king, there was no reason for him to let a talent slip away from his hands. Zhangzhou's Anshan County. That place is very far from here. It takes at least half a year for your letters to come and go. How did you get a reply so quickly? Yang Xi frowned. "I have heard of this Feng Zhi. His character is not very good." The key was that this Feng Zhen also seemed to be a sickly person. Unlike Wei Xi's weak body that was acquired, Feng Zhen's weak body was brought out from his mother's womb. Two sickly people gathered together. Were they trying to kill him, Yang Xi? Wei Xi said, "Zhi is a carefree person. He always likes to say, happiness should be enjoyed in time, how can it be delayed? His body is not good and he was born weak. It's not bad to have such a carefree personality. It's much better than being depressed in his heart and being young." Yang Xi raised his eyebrows. It seemed like Wei Xi was also a person who liked to be stubborn and depressed all day long. Did he have the cheek to say this? Hearing you say this, I'm a little interested. Wei Xi was silent for a while and looked at Yang Xi with pity. This kind of interest was not good. If not for Feng Zhen's ability, Wei Xi would not have been able to write letters to his friends in Zhongzhou. He really did not want to recruit Feng Zhen. One Her Majesty was hard enough to serve. Now that there was Feng Zhen, his days would really be chaotic. To put it nicely, Feng Zhen's temperament was carefree. To put it bluntly, he was unrestrained. The Feng Zhen that Wei Xi knew in his past life could be described with one word, unrestrained. Because doctors always said that Feng Zhen's body was weak and that he would not live long, Feng Zhen felt that life was short and that he had to enjoy himself. So this person courted death in all kinds of ways. He ate hanshi powder like it was rice. He slept with women every night and drank until he was unconscious. He was proficient in eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. He thought about how to court death all day long and how to court death. He greatly damaged the atmosphere of the group under Her Majesty. What was the result? In his past life, Wei Xi had knelt down and Feng Zhen was still alive and kicking. Chapter 568. My lord, Ping feels a little strange. Jiang Pingji smiled as she took a pair of chopsticks and asked him, "What's strange?" She brought Zhang Ping to inspect all the drainage points in Xiangyang district and found that the drainage pipes were operating normally. Coincidentally, the scorching sun was high above their heads and their stomachs were empty. Jiang Pingji and Zhang Ping found a table in a restaurant and planned to order a few dishes to make up for a meal. Coincidentally, the restaurant was opened by the government and was named Greeting Guests House. She looked around. The restaurant's decoration was simple and elegant. The environment was quiet and secluded. It was indeed a good place to eat. Yes, Wei Xi did a good job in this area. Not long after they sat down, the curtain of the small room was lifted and a waiter with a broken palm came in. The waiter looked at Jiang Pingji and Zhang Ping in astonishment. He was stunned for a while before he knelt down heavily. "Your humble servant greets you, my lord." The restaurant was opened by the government. The employees were either injured retired soldiers or the families of soldiers who died in battle. The waiter in front of them was a soldier who retired due to disability. He found a position as a waiter in the restaurant. Although he was a waiter, he was a veteran who had been to the battlefield. He could also be a hired thug. His monthly salary was enough to support a family of 3. Until now, the veteran still insisted on the habit of daily morning training. Although he was disabled, he was in good spirits. Jiang Pingji said, "Get up. Shihing and I are just here for a meal. Don't be so formal." The waiter got up obediently, but he was still somewhat restrained. Jiang Pingji took a roll of bamboo slips. It was the menu of the restaurant. The ideas provided by the viewers in the streaming room were written on each bamboo slip. They were categorized and looked very novel. Jiang Pingji looked at the names of the dishes and ordered 2, 3 vegetarian dishes and 2 meat dishes. She then passed the menu to Zhang Ping. She took the opportunity to ask some questions. Basically, she asked about the veteran's life after he was disabled and retired. The veteran slowly let go of his courage and was not so restrained. She asked a question and the veteran answered it honestly. "Your humble servant's life is not bad, my lord. A few months ago, Iceman made a matchmaker and married a wife. She is now 3 months pregnant. The work in the restaurant is not heavy. I come to clean at dawn every day and prepare to open the restaurant. I close at dusk. I get 2 salaries every month. My family eats, wears, and has a lot of money left every month. My wife is also hardworking. She knits a sweater at home." Jiang Pingji asked in detail, and the veteran had a lot to say. His face was flushed with excitement, and there was no hint of gloom. Zhang Ping silently looked through the menu 17 to 18 times, buying time for his lord. Hard Cuban, work starts at 5:00 in the morning and closes at 9:00 in the evening. Forget it, that means work starts at 5:00 in the morning and closes at 9:00 at night? Would it be too tiring? Now that he had lost his left hand, would it be inconvenient for him to live? If this was the modern era, he might still be able to reattach his hand, but in ancient times, he would be crippled for life. Strive for next month, listen carefully to their conversation. This veteran can receive 3 years of disability compensation. That's quite a lot. He's working as a waiter and a bodyguard, earning 2 people's wages. His life should be pretty good, right? After watching the live stream for a long time, the audience more or less understood Jiang Pingji's situation. The veteran's life was not bad. Midnight Xiuxian, by the way, why do they have to give the disability allowance for 3 years? Can't they just give it all at once? Wu Yu Qingxian, according to my analysis, there are probably 2 reasons. If they give it all at once, the burden on the streamer will be huge. After all, it's not a single soldier's death or injury. Secondly, if they don't restrain themselves and spend it all, what will they do in the future? I think the 3-year allowance is to give the veteran some buffer time. In 3 years, if they are patient, they can learn a trade to make a living. When the time comes, they can still support themselves without the allowance. Although the audience in the live stream did not all guess correctly, it was not far from Jiang Pingji's intention. The veteran was hardworking, and the wife he married was also capable. There was still hope for the family's life. Jiang Pingji nodded, and Jiang Ping tactfully handed the menu back to the veteran. After the veteran left, Jiang Ping said, "Business at the guest house is not bad. The food in the restaurant was delicious, and it was always full of guests at mealtimes. Even though the price was 4 to 5 times more expensive than ordinary restaurants, there were still people who came to support them. Of course, the people did not have the money to eat there often, but they could afford to eat there occasionally." Jiang Pingji said, "When the business of the restaurant stabilizes, I plan to let the chef teach the recipes of ordinary dishes to other restaurants in the county." Jiang Ping was stunned and did not react for a moment. Why did the Lord suddenly say this? Jiang Pingji said, "The officials don't compete with the people, and the people can't afford to compete. The business of the guest house is good enough. If it continues to grow, it will definitely suppress the restaurants of other people, which goes against my original intention. Let the chef publicize the recipes of ordinary dishes, and the people can also eat cheap and delicious food. The guest house will continue to take the more expensive route, and the two will not interfere with each other." Jiang Pingji thought for a long time about the name of the restaurant. In the end, she accepted the audience's suggestion and named it Guest House. To put it bluntly, it was a problem of the customer base. The restaurant of the common people served the common people, and a meal did not cost much. The dishes made by the guest house were more expensive, and they served customers with financial ability. They took the middle and high-end route, and tried to separate the customer base of the two. Jiang Pingji was not short of money. She could afford to subsidize the disabled soldiers, but there was no need to steal the business of the common people. Jiang Ping understood and could not help but feel emotional. When she was unreliable, his lord was really unreliable. But when the lord was reliable, a wise ruler was nothing more than that. How many high-ranking people took the people's money in an unsightly manner? Only his lord could see it clearly, and she did it flawlessly. While the two were talking, a frightening cough came from the restaurant next door. Jiang Ping suddenly thought of something and said, "My lord." Jiang Ping remembered what was wrong. There were coughs along the way. He did not know when it started, but Jiang Ping could always hear the coughs. Who was he muttering about before? Why did he come out to wander around when he was so sick? Now. His expression turned serious, and he raised his hand to pull out the short dagger from his waist. He looked dangerously in the direction of the coughs. They were being followed all the way. Jiang Pingji smiled and waved her hand at him. "Put it away, it's just a meal." Jiang Ping was an introverted scholar with mediocre martial arts skills, but Jiang Pingji was not. She knew long ago that someone was following them. Jiang Ping was surprised, and he sheathed the dagger before the waiter served the dishes. "My lord, you knew long ago?" Jiang Ping asked. "What else?" Jiang Pingji smiled and turned her body to make it convenient for the waiter to set up the table. Who doesn't know this face in Xiangyang district? I'm not popular either. What if someone finds me an eyesore and tries to harm me when I'm alone? If your lord did not have this little bit of vigilance, how would she dare to bring a weakling around the district? Let's eat, we'll meet the person next door after we're full. As soon as she finished speaking, the coughs became more intense. Chapter 569. Yan Rian, ha 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 ha, I feel like Jiang Ping is hurt. The streamer's words are a critical hit. Sophie Tang Tang, cough, cough, cough. Although I also want to laugh, I don't think Zhang Ping understands what Zhang Ping means, does he? Vegetarian number, I hope he doesn't understand. He'll be sad if he does. Speaking of which, who isn't Zhang Ping in front of the streamer? Xiao Santian, ha ha ha, slapped the table. My friend above, your words are too hurtful. Zhang Ping smiled sheepishly. His martial arts skills were indeed lacking. He had no problem dealing with ordinary people, but if he encountered a ruthless character who was difficult to deal with, a salted fish like him could only lie on the ground and cheer for his lord. He could only sit and watch as his lord fought them all. My lord, why is he following us? Zhang Ping did not discover the whereabouts of that person. Apart from being too focused on his work, another reason was that he could not sense the person's malice. Zhang Pingji said, I don't know either, but he is indeed an interesting person. Zhang Ping was surprised. Seeing that his lord had some interest on her face, he was a little more curious about the guest he had never met before. The other party coughed for a long time and finally calmed down. However, Zhang Pingji knew that the person was still next door and was leisurely enjoying his lunch. Her appetite was much larger than that of a normal man. She ate several times more food every meal. Zhang Ping was very surprised every time. His lord didn't look sturdy, so where exactly did she put all the food? After eating and drinking to their heart's content, the conversation between the waiter and the strange man could be heard from outside the dining room. Zhang Pingji said, let him in. After a while, the curtain of the dining room was lifted and a man wearing old gray clothes walked in. The man was about 27 or 28 years old. His figure was thin, and the loose, old-fashioned clothes he wore made him look even thinner. There was not much flesh on his cheeks. His chin was slightly sharp. His thin lips were abnormally light green and his face was paler than normal people. If it was not for his clear features and temperament, he might have been mistaken for an old hooligan who was addicted to wine and women. When the person appeared, the audience in the streaming room became lively. Hard Cuban, this person's image is really good. He gives off the feeling of a sick and weak wastrel. A decadent beauty. Dongfang Yaoya, host, are you trying to summon a dragon with all kinds of handsome men? The elegant man, his wife Wei Zixiao, the gentle and dignified Feng Huayu, the adorable Li Hanmei, the foodie Yang Jingrong, the virtuous and naggy Su Xiaoyu, the mature and gloomy Qiguan Wenjing. Whoa! Now, there was an unknown, sickly, dissolute, and good-looking young man. This live stream room was so good-looking. Tang Xiaoyao is also me, ha ha ha, there's nothing wrong with these descriptions. But what the hell is Yang Jingrong, a foodie and stupid person? Be careful of Yang Si looking for you to have a heart-to-heart talk in the middle of the night. Yang Si's description to Beauty Wei Ci was clearly, overthinking, sinister, and good at using poisonous tricks. Shuxian Taishuang, if Prince Charming Yang Si really wants to settle accounts in the middle of the night, remember to inform him to come to my bed. The bed is already warmed. Jiang Pingji glanced at the newcomer. He didn't stand on ceremony at all. He shamelessly found a seat near Jiang Pingji and sat down. She suddenly said, if you don't want to die young, with no one to take care of the orphans, it's better to stop using hanshi powder. That person looked at Jiang Pingji. Zhang Ping also looked at the unfamiliar man in astonishment. You've been consuming hanshi powder for at least 4 years. If this continues, you'll have to report to the King of Hell. Recently, you've been consuming hanshi powder. The interval between each use is getting shorter and shorter. If you don't make up your mind to quit, you can even consider which tomb to be buried in after you die. Have you experienced the feeling of your addiction acting up? If it acts up and you can't buy hanshi powder, do you think you have the willpower not to beg others? She asked with a natural expression. I can see that you're quite an arrogant person. You probably don't want others to see you at your most pathetic state. The young man originally had a disdainful smile on his face. The more he listened, the worse his expression became. His dark eyes carried a stern look. Zhang Ping was dumbfounded as he listened. Jiang Pingji said to herself, "Forget it, I think you're not suitable." The young man was astonished. He didn't say anything. The indignation and anger in his heart rose again. "What do you mean by this?" Jiang Pingji said bluntly, "Although you didn't say anything, when you came in, I already knew everything. You observed me and Shiheng along the way, did you really think I didn't notice? I think you're probably a talent that Zixiao wrote a letter to recruit. You're observing me to see if I'm suitable. However, a wise man can choose his master. Conversely, a master can also choose a wise man. When you came in, I already felt you're not suitable." Zhang Ping was astonished. He really wanted to step forward and cover his lord's mouth. If the young man was really recommended by Wei Xi, he must be a great talent. His lord couldn't court disaster like this. The young man saw Zhang Ping's conflicted expression. His mood became slightly better, but he continued to speak harshly. "Such a foolish person is the wise lord that Wei Zixiao thinks highly of. He was ridiculed without understanding him. It made him extremely unhappy. The world is full of talents. There's no shortage of troublemakers. With this body of yours, how many years can you serve me?" Jiang Pingji returned with the same harsh sarcasm. "Think about it carefully. Between the 2 times you consumed the powder, how long can your mind be clear? A clear mind is an essential requirement for a strategist." The young man was addicted to the powder. Jiang Pingji really didn't dare to use it casually. Talents are talents, but not all talents can be used. The young man was silent for a moment. He carefully recalled Jiang Pingji's previous words. Only then did he realize that she wasn't speaking without thinking. "Zixiao told you." He had been consuming hanqi powder for some years, but his social circle was very small. It was impossible for Lu Shi to know unless Wei Xi was a busybody. Jiang Pingji replied honestly, "No, Zixiao didn't say anything. He didn't even tell me who he wrote the letter to." The young man was interested and deliberately made things difficult for her. "I think I have the ability to rule over the world. You chased me away just like that. Aren't you afraid that I'll bear a grudge? Although Fingyi County is one of the few fertile lands in the north, the terrain isn't good. It's easy to attack and hard to defend. If I'm determined to take revenge, it's not like I don't have the ability." Jiang Pingji didn't even lift her eyelids. She mocked back, continued to consume the powder. "If your body can live to that age, consider it my loss." The corner of the young man's mouth twitched. He almost couldn't hold it in. "There's actually someone who has a worse mouth than me in this world." Zhang Ping was afraid that the young man would leave in a huff. However, the young man didn't leave angrily. He even mocked his lord. Every word was harsh. There was a sense of déjà vu that they were evenly matched. The talents of this generation, he really couldn't understand them. The audience in the streaming room couldn't understand them either. The previous Yang Si and the current Feng Zhen, were they all masochists? If they were strategists, they would have slammed the table and left long ago when they met the streamer who had a bad mouth and a bad temper. The young man's surname was Feng and his given name was Zhen. He was from Zhangzhou's Anshan County. Chapter 570. Jiang Pingji said, "Think back to the feeling of hanqi powder acting up. Can you touch your conscience and tell me there's no harm?" Feng Zhen's face froze. Just like what Jiang Pingji said before, it's been almost 4.5 years since the first time he consumed hanqi powder. In the beginning, he only consumed it once every 1 or 2 months, occasionally to liven up his mood. In recent years, he consumed it once every half a month, until now, once every 7 to 8 days. Every time he consumed it, his mind would become more cheerful, his physical strength would become stronger, his entire body would feel light and his mind would feel extremely comfortable. Once the addiction of the powder hits him, if he didn't consume hanshi powder in time, his bones would feel like they were being bitten by thousands of insects and ants. It would be unbearable. However, he still had some integrity, his dependence on hanshi powder wasn't very serious. If it was someone else who consumed hanshi powder intermittently for 4.5 years, he would probably have lost his mind, indulging in sensual pleasures, headaches and suffocation, restlessness and madness every day. However, based on his current situation, if he continued to consume hanshi powder, the intervals between consumption would get shorter and shorter, his life would be in danger. Jiang Pingjie shook her head and said, "You've also noticed, from the time you started consuming hanshi powder till now, the intervals between consumption are getting shorter and shorter. If you don't consume it on time, your bones will feel like they are being bitten by thousands of insects and ants, that excruciating pain, can you endure it?" This was a vicious cycle. If he didn't quit hanshi powder, his dependence on hanshi powder would get stronger and stronger, the intervals between consumption would get shorter, the amount of time his mind could stay awake would decrease. After the cycle of nausea, it would be a dead end. Feng couldn't refute. However, to quit hanshi powder, he had to endure the process of the addiction acting up. It was easier said than done. Feng had the same thinking as many gentry. His family was rich and didn't lack hanshi powder. If the addiction acted up, he could just consume it. Why torture himself? He thought of the pain when the addiction acted up. He shook his head like a rattledrum. No way, no way. The addiction would make one want to die. Why bother to quit? Happiness should come in time. Why wait for it? Life is only 30 to 50 years. Life is short. It's enough to enjoy. Why torture yourself? When the audience in the streaming room heard their conversation, they then clearly realized that the weak and dissolute guy in front of them was an addict. Tian Shu Shiji, this guy is amazing. He's still alive after consuming hanshi powder for more than 4 years. He's really lucky. Jiao, AI, isn't it good to be alive? Why don't you want to live? Mother's Day the day after tomorrow, I'm scratching the wall. Why do I feel that what this young man said makes sense? Oh no, my 3 views have been turned upside down. Although hanshi powder wasn't a drug, but if one took too much of it, they would become addicted and their entire life would be ruined. Don't forget to the previous commenter who is making a fuss over nothing, I'm sure you haven't been following the streamer's live stream for a long time. The hanshi powder has appeared a long time ago. It seems to be somewhat similar to the Wei and Jin dynasties in China. The aristocratic families were very fond of this thing. Did they really not know that hanshi powder was harmful? Not necessarily. Just like what Feng had thought, many people knew that once one got addicted to hanshi powder, it would be extremely painful to quit. But it wasn't as if they couldn't afford to buy hanshi powder. When they felt uncomfortable, they could just take the powder. Why torment themselves and endure the pain of quitting the powder? In this day and age, beauty is one of the important conditions to become an official, to walk towards the pinnacle of life and to marry a fair, rich and beautiful woman. After consuming the hanshi powder, one's senses will feel comfortable and it can also make one feel refreshed, with a rosy complexion, fair skin and beautiful appearance. To them, this is a good thing. Hence, there were many admirers. Feng naturally didn't consume hanshi powder for his beauty, he purely wanted to enjoy and have fun. Since he didn't have a long life, he wouldn't waste it if he tried everything at least once. Now that Jiang Pingjie advised him to quit using hanshi powder, Feng expressed that it was impossible, he wouldn't quit even if he died. Jiang Pingjie also expressed that she wouldn't accept people who were not clear-headed. Zhang Ping sighed as he watched from the side. His lord was courting death, yet she didn't make him leave in anger. It could be seen that Feng Zhen was also a masochist. Feng Zhen also felt strange. It was fine as long as he was useful, why did she have to interfere in his private affairs? Although the wise lord that Wei Ci had acknowledged had the appearance of a wise ruler, his character was not pleasing to the eye. Feng Zhen asked her sarcastically, "There are many people who are after Hanshi powder. Are you going to persuade everyone you meet to quit using Hanshi powder? Be careful that no one will be available in the future. At such a young age, he's a busybody." Jiang Pingji was astonished. How can that be? Not everyone has the qualifications for me to persuade them. If he's addicted to Hanshi powder, if he doesn't make up his mind to quit, I'll never use such a useless person. Who knows when his addiction will kick in and he'll delay my work. The world is so big, there will always be people who are clean and clear-headed. Why should I waste my energy on such a useless person? Feng Zhen didn't know if he should feel honored or angry. Such a lord would be done for. If she didn't finish, he would read the 2 words Feng Zhen upside down. You've eaten the dishes from the guest house. How do you like the taste? Jiang Pingji asked him. Feng Zhen said, the delicacies of the world. I didn't know that there were so many different types of dishes. Jiang Pingji said coldly, when you die, you won't be able to eat the delicacies anymore. They'll all be on other people's tables. Feng Zhen was speechless. She asked, you like to sleep with women and get drunk until the sun rises? Feng Zhen smiled and said, the way of saints is to eat and lust. So what if I like it? He knew that he didn't have long to live. After his wife died, he didn't remarry or take a concubine. He slept with women and lived a carefree life. When you die, the beauty will be in someone else's arms and the wine will be in someone else's cup. Feng Zhen was speechless. Jiang Pingji asked again, you're also good at gambling. Feng Zhen held it in and said, why can't I gamble a little? Jiang Pingji sighed and said, when you die, the family business that hasn't been squandered yet will belong to someone else. Feng Zhen was speechless. You have a son who's not more than 5 years old. Do you have mean relatives in your family? Feng Zhen was astonished. He didn't know how she knew all this. He replied, so what if I do? When you die, your relatives will use your inheritance to bully your son. Don't you think that's pitiful? Feng Zhen couldn't bear it anymore. His mind was filled with, when you die, when he really died, no, he was still alive, okay? Jiang Pingji said, I agree with what you said, happiness should be enjoyed in time. But people can only enjoy the secular world when they're alive. When they die, they'll have nothing. If you abstain from Hanshi powder, you can live a carefree life for another 7 or 8 years. If you don't, you won't live past 7 or 8 months. If you think about it this way, don't you feel that you're at a disadvantage? You could have lived a carefree life for a few years, but now you'll die in a few months. Feng Zhen was speechless. The beauty isn't yours, the delicacies aren't yours, the wine isn't yours, and the gambling money isn't yours. Tell me, isn't this a loss? Only by living well would one have the strength to enjoy life. If they die, they'll just be as salted fish. So, he really didn't intend to abstain from Hanshi powder. Abstain, he must live well and see how this fellow will court his own death. Who asked him to keep saying, you're going to die, and, it's not yours? No matter how he listened, it was unpleasant. Chapter 571. A letter from your lord. What's written inside? Yang Si couldn't help but stretch his neck to look at the letter in Wei Ci's hands. He didn't know what was written inside for this person to be so happy. Could it be? He raised his eyebrows. A feeling of gossiping arose in his heart. When he fixed his eyes on the letter, he was instantly disappointed. Isn't it just that Feng Zhen is willing to stay? Why, what amazing talent does this person have to make you so happy? Wei Ci kept the smile on his face and said seriously, I am not happy because of Zishi's pledge of allegiance. Yang Si was surprised and asked, Oh. Then why? Wei Ci said, Zishi is usually unrestrained, almost no one can persuade him to restrain himself. But, he promised my lord to give up Hanshi powder. True love, this is, Yang Si's eyes flashed with surprise. He was no stranger to Hanshi powder. He heard that if one takes too much of it, they will never be able to live without it. If there is any mistake in the process of taking the powder, it could lead to death. Even so, there are still people who regard it as the standard, because the process of giving up Hanshi powder is too painful. Too many people can't take it and choose to continue using Hanshi powder to numb themselves. But Feng Zhen's promise to give up Hanshi powder, what does this have to do with Wei Ci being happy? As if he saw the confusion on Yang Si's face, Wei Ci smiled and said, Giving up Hanshi powder isn't something that can be done in a day, he is in for it. After Yang Si heard this, he couldn't help but shiver. So he was happy only because Feng Zhen was going to suffer. Why is this fox's heart so black? Wei Ci said, Jing Rong doesn't understand, wait till you really meet Zishi, you will understand. Others worried so much for his body, but the person himself didn't care. He wasted his energy, how could he not be angry? Now that Feng Zhen is in for it, if Wei Ci wasn't happy for a while, he would be letting down his worries in the past. But, he flattened the curvature of his lips and looked at the letter in his hands with a gloomy gaze, his brows carrying some doubt. Yang Si asked him, What's wrong with you? Wei Ci replied calmly, I just didn't expect Zishi to take the powder for 4 years. Yang Si thought it was something serious and said, You've taken the powder for 4 years, yet you still have the energy to seek death. You don't know how to take care of yourself. You're indeed a tough guy. Wei Ci shook his head secretly. That was not what he meant, but he could not explain it clearly to Yang Si. In his past life, he lived in seclusion in Zhongzhao's Bianzhou and maintained correspondence with Feng Zhen. He remembered that when Feng Zhen first came into contact with Hanshi powder, he was already over 30 years old. How old is he now? He had actually been consuming the Hanshi powder for 4.5 years and he was already addicted to it. It was really puzzling. Speaking of which, he seemed to have overlooked something. A thought flashed across Wei Ci's mind and he came to his senses in an instant. Hanshi powder. This thing was indeed popular among the gentry clans, but at that time, the 9 states and 5 countries were already in a dispirited and hopeless state. Some of the nobles from the gentry clans who led a befuddled life used Hanshi powder to numb themselves. The effect of the upper class was similar to that of the lower class, and Hanshi powder was spread everywhere, and once it was spread out, it could not be stopped. Calculating the time, it should be 3 to 5 years later before the Hanshi powder is truly spread and abused by others. In his previous life, Feng Zhen had heard that Hanshi powder could strengthen his physique and that was why he consumed it. To him now was merely seeking death for the sake of enjoyment. Before that, Hanshi powder was only popular among the gentry clans within a small circle, it had never been so widespread. But now, recalling the assessment a few years ago, the scholar who participated in the assessment took off his clothes and molested him in public. Wei Ci's face turned pale. Uncontrollably, Master Chen's words surfaced in his mind. Hanshi powders spread many years ago might have something to do with the evildoer who stole the fate of Dongqing. After consuming Hanshi powder for 4 years, the addiction has already formed. To completely kick the habit, one would have to suffer a lot. In his previous life, Feng Zhen had only consumed Hanshi powder for 1 to 2 years. Afterwards, Jiang Pingji forced him to quit. According to Fengzhen's own recollection, the process of quitting was extremely painful. It caused him to develop a conditional fear towards the 3 words Hanqi powder. In this life, he had consumed Hanqi powder for 4 years. Wouldn't the pain of quitting be multiplied? Yang Si said sarcastically, "You can gloat, that Fengzhen is really unlucky to know you." The addiction of Hanqi powder was not as strong as drugs, the probability of completely quitting was also high, but the withdrawal reaction was not something a normal person could endure. The strong desire in the mind, the pain in the body, under the double pressure, only by relying on willpower could one get through it. Runny nose and tears, muscle cramps, stomach cramps, headache and nausea. Fengzhen had tried to quit, but the feeling was too painful. He endured it for a while and gave up, choosing to bow down to the Hanqi powder master. Now, how could Jiang Pingji allow him to give up? Fengzhen did not know what Jiang Pingji did to him. When the addiction of Hanqi powder hit him, other than his pair of eyes that could move and his brain that could think, his entire body felt weak and powerless. He could not speak when he opened his mouth, but his consciousness remained clear and he could feel the movement in his body. The addiction flared up, from noon to dusk. His sweat had already soaked his clothes several times. Feeling the pain in his body gradually recede, Fengzhen panted heavily, as if he had crawled back from the 18th level of hell. "How do you feel?" Jiang Pingji entered from outside the house. Behind her was a guard who carried a clean set of clothes. Fengzhen laid on the ground, slowly regaining control of his body, but his limbs were still weak, even sitting up was difficult. "I don't want to talk to you." Fengzhen's face was full of sweat. He drowsily closed his eyes. He could not bear to recall the pain from before. He could not bear to recall himself being controlled by the addiction. When the addiction flared up, he thought of hundreds of ways to kill Jiang Pingji. He wished he could drink her blood, eat her flesh. He was even more crazy and cruel than a wild beast. How could he still have an ounce of rationality? "I got someone to prepare some light detoxifying food for you. Eat some after you wash up." In the next month, the addiction flares up more frequently, and the duration is longer. "If you don't have enough stamina and energy, I'm afraid you won't be able to withstand it." Jiang Pingji said, "You should also be thankful that you were rather disciplined when using Hanqi powder. You did not abuse it recklessly." Fengzhen had used Hanqi powder for more than 4 years, but the amount every time was small, and the interval was longer. It was only in the last year that it became more frequent. The dosage also increased. If not, he would have died a long time ago. He could not be more dead. Jiang Pingji's mental brain was strong. She could secretly help him to stay awake, and it was safer for him to pass the withdrawal period. After Fengzhen heard this, he could not help but tremble. It was so painful once, and there would be more flare-ups in the next month. How could he withstand it? "Can I regret it?" He did not want to quit. "No, you can endure it for a while. The future will be bright." Jiang Pingji looked at Fengzhen, who was lying on the ground like a salted fish. She smiled and said, "I brewed some wine recently. It's much stronger than the wine you usually drink. When you control your addiction, I'll treat you to 2 cups. Wine. Chapter 572. Beautiful. Fengzhen took a hot bath and changed into soft, airy, and light clothes. As he had been taking the Hanqi powder all year round, his skin was very delicate. A slight abrasion would leave an obvious red mark, and it was extremely painful. That was why he could only wear old and worn-out clothes. After taking a shower, his long hair was still wet. He sat down and drank a cup of the wine Jiang Pingji brewed. As soon as the wine entered his stomach, he felt that it was incomparably hot. The warmth spread to his limbs and bones, and the tipsy feeling rushed straight to his brain. There's actually such a strong wine in this world. Beautiful. At first, he was not used to it, but after a while, the aftertaste was endless. The tipsy feeling made his whole body feel light. Awesome, it felt even better than hanshi powder. The corners of Jiang Pingji's eyes twitched. The audience in the streaming room expressed their worries. Shuzhong Zi Yuyen Ryu, streamer, are you sure it's enough for this guy to abstain from hanshi powder? Why don't I quit drinking too? Jianghu, not only must he abstain from alcohol, he must also abstain from gambling and lust. The live stream should spread positive energy. A guy like Feng Zhen, who has lost his inhibitions, should be reformed. She might as well let him become a monk and forget about the 5 skandhas. Luo peanut candy, ha ha ha, although I should sympathize with him, I really can't help but feel sorry for Feng Zhen. Little angel, if he hadn't met the host, Feng Zhen would have been able to do whatever he wanted. He would have been able to court death however he wanted. But now... sigh, he has no choice. Meeting the host might have been the biggest disaster of Feng Zhen's life. Jiang Pingji said, alcohol can harm the liver easily, so you shouldn't drink too much. Just drink half a bottle today. She poured the rest of the wine into her own bowl and drank it all in one gulp. My wine. Just as he reached out to stop her, there were only a few drops of wine left in her bowl. It happened so quickly that Feng Zhen couldn't react in time. Jiang Pingji sneered. That's mine. Feng Zhen gritted his teeth and said, how can you be so despicable? He hadn't had enough. Jiang Pingji said, do you want more? Just endure the next craving. Feng Zhen, I have a saying, you are very arrogant, does your father know? I don't know if I should say it or not. Lu Shi, come back here. Just as Jiang Pingji had said, it was very painful in the early stages of giving up the powder. It would act up frequently, but once it was over, it would be a whole new world. In the beginning, it would only flare up once every 1 or 2 days, and each flare-up for more than half a day. Gradually, it became a flare-up every 3 to 5 days, and it would flare up for an hour. 2 months later, Feng Zhen's vitality slowly improved. His cheeks had a healthy flush, and the green color on his lips had faded. Even his thin cheeks had gained some weight. He had yet to completely abstain from hanshi powder, but when his addiction flared up, he no longer needed Jiang Pingji's special care. Just based on his willpower, he could withstand the withdrawal symptoms and resist the urge to consume hanshi powder. This was considered a huge improvement. Of course, based on the ridicule from the audience in the streaming room, perhaps the appeal of fine wine to Feng Zhen was far greater than the hanshi powder. The benefits of quitting the powder were obvious. This was something Feng Zhen was most familiar with. Previously, his brain was like glass that was covered with dirt that was difficult to remove. Now that the dirt was gone, sunlight could pass through the glass without any obstruction. His thoughts were unprecedentedly clear, and his thinking speed was much faster than before. Even his memory had recovered a lot. One had to know that after consuming hanshi powder, his brain was somewhat sluggish and his memory was weak. He would often forget some unimportant things after hearing them. Jiang Pingji saw that he had recovered well. She directly brought him to the government office and assigned Dian Yan to be his temporary guard. Even if he ran to the toilet, Dian Yan had to wait outside the toilet and was not allowed to leave easily. This made Feng Zhen furious. Jiang Pingji said, "Isn't it because I'm afraid that your addiction will suddenly act up? With Dian Yan watching over you, I'm more at ease." Feng Zhen said, "Who would believe your words?" Was it because she was concerned about him? The hanshi powder he had on him had been wiped clean. Even if he wanted to use it, he couldn't. Occasionally, his addiction to alcohol would kick in and he would want to drink a little or sneak out to play with girls, drinking and having fun. Not long after, Dian Yan would appear with a pair of glaring eyes. He looked at him without saying a word, not saying a word, just looking at him. Even if Feng Zhen was thick-skinned, he was too embarrassed to continue hugging girls. Was this concern? After a while, he was almost scared to the point of impotence. Jiang Pingji said seriously, "The autumn harvest has just ended. Fingyi County has to be busy with the matters of getting through the winter. Whether it's the people's livelihood or the army's training, they come one after another. At such a time, you're enjoying yourself alone. What will others think? After you're done with this, you can play as much as you want. I'll reimburse all your expenses. How about it? That good?" Feng Zhen was suspicious, but Jiang Pingji was too sincere. He couldn't help but choose to believe her. Feng Jin clicked his tongue. His lord's painting skills were even more exquisite. Feng Zhen still didn't know the fear of working overtime. However, he had secretly seen how Feng Zhen's addiction acted up. Now that he hadn't completely kicked the addiction, would there be any slip-ups if he was allowed to handle official matters? Jiang Pingji said, "It's all right. Don't be fooled by his sickly appearance. He has too much energy. Once he's idle, no one knows what he's thinking about. It's dangerous for his addiction to act up. Let him work hard in the government office and waste his energy. I guarantee that he won't even have the energy to think about what hanshi powder is." To put it bluntly, when the addiction flared up in the past, it was because he had nothing better to do. When he's busy, the situation will improve. She was speaking nonsense with a straight face, but Feng Jin didn't dare to agree. Why didn't he know that a heavy workload could help him kick the addiction? It was obviously his lord who was making things up. At the end of November, Gu Xian's trusted aide brought a group of merchants to the Xiangyang district. The items he brought this time were much more than the previous totals. "Your servant greets the owner." It was the confidant's first time meeting Jiang Pingji, but the respect on his face was not fake. "How's the plan this time?" Jiang Pingji discussed in detail with this confidant in the study. The guards and maids around were all cleared away. She even temporarily shut down the streaming room. Gu Xian's confidant was the manager of the treasure house. He said, "Everything went smoothly. All the colored glass of the Heavenly Palace has been sold to the North Borderlines Business Alliance at 30% of the price. The money and jewels exchanged are all recorded here. Owner, please take a look." Jiang Pingji reached out and received the thick and heavy account book. The records were indeed very detailed. There was not a single discrepancy in the amount. "You've worked hard this time. I plan to allocate 200,000 strings of coins to reward the merchant group that transported the goods." Although it was only 30%, the profit was undoubtedly terrifying. 20 sets of glass jewelry were sold at the normal price. The total was 1.83 million strings of coins. The remaining 2,000 sets were sold to the North Borderlines Business Alliance at 30% of the price. The total was 17.36 million strings of coins. The total was 19 million strings of coins. These were all exchanged for gold, silver, and jewels of equivalent value. There was not much fluctuation. The manager of the treasure house also used more than 100,000 strings of coins to purchase a large amount of sheepskin and wool. It almost emptied out the stock accumulated by the farmers in the North Borderline. The manager smiled. This is what a servant should do. Chapter 573. The manager of the treasure house was indeed worthy of praise. Not only could he complete the task perfectly, but he could also keep his heart in the face of millions of dollars without greed. If Jiang Pingji did not reward him well and let him get the reward he deserved, who would work for her in the future? Even if she knew that the manager of the treasure house could achieve this, Gu Xian must have done something secretly, but the reward was clear and she could not be stingy. Therefore, In addition to the 200,000 strings of coins awarded to the caravan, she also took out an additional 20,000 strings of coins from the private treasury to give to the manager. Suke had been helping Jiang Pingji to manage the private treasury. He recorded every expenditure and income in detail. Seeing the two payments, even though he was used to seeing his lord's generosity, he could not help but be speechless. A total of 220,000 strings of coins, not 22 strings of coins. Did he know what 220,000 strings of coins meant? He only needed to take out 10,000 strings of coins and he could buy a position as a district magistrate in Dongqing. If he donated 100,000 strings of coins, he could become a county magistrate in name only. If this wasn't a big deal, then what was? Suke looked at the two payments and sighed. When he saw the other payment, he was so shocked that he even threw away his brush. The annual income of the National Treasury was only 90 to 150 million strings of coins. His lord was just a district magistrate who occupied the entire territory of Fengyi County without a proper reason. Her income in a few months was close to 20 million strings of coins. Su could suppress the urge to scream for a long time. Because of this, he was in a trance and almost floated to the government office of Xiangyang District. Feng Jin looked up and saw Su Ku, whom he had not seen for a few months. He was much thinner than he remembered. He said with concern, looking at Xiaoyu, "The matters in Maolin District must be very heavy. If you are too tired, why don't you discuss with the Lord and rest at home for 2 days?" Su Ku was stunned and regained his senses. "I'm fine." The government affairs in Maolin District were indeed very busy. In the beginning, they were so busy that Su Ku almost forgot how it felt to sleep. Fortunately, he successfully got through that period and everything was on the right track. The following matters were handled by his subordinates according to the regulations. Su Ku only needed to handle some trivial matters and strengthen supervision and inspection. Feng Jin was surprised and looked at Su Ku from head to toe. Su Ku was still wearing the old clothes that his aunt and Xuanmei made for him a few years ago. The old clothes that originally fit him looked empty now. "You should eat more. Look, you've lost so much weight." Feng Jin had a lot of work in the past 6 months. Logically speaking, his workload should be reduced by 20%. However, the food in the government office was too good. In addition, he had a virtuous and meticulous wife to take care of him. His face was ruddy and he looked like a flower that had been carefully watered. Su Ke nodded, still looking absent-minded. Before they could say more, unfamiliar footsteps came from outside the government office, accompanied by a tuneless tune. Su Ke frowned. Feng Jin said, "It should be Zisher." Zisher. Su Ke was extremely busy in Maolin District. Occasionally, he had the time to pay attention to the matters in Xiangyang District. Feng Zhen was one of them. It was said that this person was addicted to hanshi powder and his behavior was unrestrained. Just based on this, Su Ke's first impression of Feng Zhen was that he was below the passing grade. Su Ke said, "Feng Zisher." Feng Jin nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, a figure in a green scholarly robe almost floated in. There was a slight smell of alcohol around him. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and he was humming an unknown tune. He mechanically said good afternoon to Feng Jin, then turned around to deal with his own affairs. Su Ke was a living person, yet he was neglected by Feng Zhen. He drank. Su Ke was surprised. The Lord actually indulged Feng Zhen so much that she allowed him to drink while working in the government office. Feng Jin let out a long sigh and said, "The Lord asked Yan Yan to keep an eye on him and not allow him to use hanshi powder or drink excessively. I don't know where this person hides the alcohol. He must be drunk during his lunch break every day. However, he does his work very well and has never made a mistake." For Jiang Pingji, As long as her subordinates did not step on her bottom line, she was happy to indulge them and allow them to have their own private hobbies. Feng Zhen could drink half a pot of alcohol every day under Dian Yan's pursuit and interception. It was impossible without Jiang Pingji's tacit approval. Feng Jin and Su Ke were both very disciplined in their personal lives. They were models of self-discipline when it came to Feng Zhen. Feng Jin and Su Ke definitely didn't approve of his behavior. However, since Jiang Pingji didn't pursue the matter, it wasn't appropriate for them to restrain Feng Zhen. The two of them did not purposely lower their voices, so Feng Zhen listened openly. He sneered and mocked the two of them. Dian Yan's pursuit and interception were powerful, but there were policies and countermeasures. Hiding a few pots of alcohol to secretly drink was a small matter. Not to mention, his drinking buddy was their lord, Jiang Pingji. It would be strange if Dian Yan found out. He thought proudly. When he lowered his head, he noticed that there were 2 more rolls of information on the table. The seal had not been opened yet. A letter for him. Feng Zhen opened it and he sobered up from his drunkenness. Ayaya, oh no. Feng Jin heard the commotion and asked, what happened? Feng Zhen pinched his chin and said, I never knew that I was so popular. Everyone was fighting over me. Feng Jin and Su Ke looked at each other in surprise. Someone had written a letter to Feng Zhen with the intention of recruiting him. The signature is interesting. Shangyang Feng Huijie. Why is this name so similar to Huayu's? Looking at the date of the signature, it was actually half a month earlier than Wei Ci. It was just that the geographical distance was different. He had received Wei Ci's letter first. Feng Huijie. Wasn't that Feng Jin's younger brother, Feng Ju? Su Ke turned his head. As expected, Feng Jin's expression had darkened. It was as if a thick layer of black paint had been applied to his face. That's my younger brother, Feng Jin answered. Feng Zhen looked at the letter in surprise and then looked at Feng Jin. Feng Ju and Feng Jin were actually biological brothers. Were they really from the same mother? Their temperaments did not seem like it. Compared to the somewhat unrestrained and rebellious Feng Ju, Feng Jin was a proper son of an aristocratic family. His every move seemed to be measured by a ruler. He was neither distant nor close. He did things by the book. It was no wonder that Feng Zhen did not associate the two of them together. After a while, he smiled and said, the person that Huijie is assisting is quite ambitious. Our Lord will not submit to anyone. If the two of them were to fight, there would definitely be a battle. In the future. I'm afraid that the situation of you brothers fighting each other will be unavoidable. Feng Jin's expression darkened even more. He hated Huang Song. He really did not know what kind of magic potion that Huang Song had fed Feng Ju. How could a mere eunuch's son be worthy of Feng Ju's full support? We all serve our own masters. If such a day really comes, Jin will naturally clean up the mess. Feng Jin snorted softly. His impression of Feng Zhen had also worsened. Feng Zhen did not care. His personality was not suitable for dealing with such righteous gentlemen. Opening the other letter, Feng Zhen clicked his tongue. It looks like that Huang Song really does have some skills. Feng Jin raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Chapter 574. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Jiang Pingji occupied the entire territory of Fengyi County. She had 20,000 meticulously trained troops in her hands. Next spring, she would be able to sweep through Wanzhou and take over the entire province. When the time came, she could directly write a memorial and force the Dongqing royal family to confer her the title of governor of Wanzhou. If they sent a large number of troops across half of the north to attack Huang Song in order to nip their enemy in the bud, they would not be able to conquer Wanzhou next year. But they would not be happy to allow Huang Song to grow at the border between the south and the north. Feng Jin said, "It's better to discuss this with the Lord. Should they allow a strong enemy to grow, or should they focus on their own development and strength first?" For Jiang Pingji, she could make the right choice with her eyes closed. "Why are you in such a hurry?" she said with a smile. "I've heard of Qing Jing. He's one of Master Yuanjing's 4 disciples. He has a great background, but don't forget that our Zixiao is also Master Yuanjing's disciple. So what if Huang Song has Qing Jing's assistance? Can he do whatever he wants? I've also studied at Langyi Academy for a few years, so I have a certain understanding of Qing Jing. He's nothing to be afraid of." Hearing words like, "whatever he wants," Feng Jin and Su Ku looked serious. They did not understand, but Feng Zhen, who was very dirty, understood instantly. If Qing Jing is incompetent, how could he be valued by Master Yuanjing? Feng Zhen heard Jiang Pingji say that Qing Jing was nothing to be afraid of, and he could not help but frown. Feng Zhen had always admired this good friend he had met through Wei Ci. He had also given Qing Jing a high degree of recognition. Jiang Pingji's contemptuous attitude made him a little unhappy. "I'm not saying that Qing Jing is incompetent. I'm just saying that he and Huang Song are partners. I'm afraid they'll drag each other down." Jiang Pingji said, "I know Huang Song. I've also heard a little about Qing Jing from the many students at Langyi Academy. They can go through thick and thin together, but they might not be able to enjoy happiness together. Qing Jing is much more hairy than Huayu. Not only does he measure himself by the standards of a gentleman, but he also likes to measure others by the same standards. As for Huang Song, he's a man who doesn't make any major mistakes, but he's full of small ones. TSK. These two people's personalities aren't compatible, unless one of them makes a concession and changes." Jiang Pingji paused at this point and continued, "To put it simply, Qing Jing's character requires a tolerant lord who doesn't mind his little criticisms. Huang Song, on the other hand, needs a subordinate who ignores his small problems. Otherwise, it will be a disaster. Of course, everything has a honeymoon period." At this time, Huang Song and Qing Jing were still in a state of intense love. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and they were satisfied wherever they looked. Huang Song's influence was small at the moment, so he would naturally exercise caution and restrain himself. Qing Jing would also wholeheartedly assist him and do his best to assist him. However, when Huang Song's strength increased and he had more people by his side, Qing Jing's advice might be an eyesore. After saying that, she concluded, "We just need to take care of our own matters. Standing firm is far more important than anything else." Feng Zhen said, "If Huang Song is allowed to grow, he will definitely become the Lord's #1 enemy." Jiang Pingji sneered. "My rival. Even if he cultivated for another 8 to 10 years, he still wouldn't be qualified. Even if he could stand up to me as an equal, he still wouldn't be able to defeat me. If we focus on such a strong enemy and neglect more important things, then we'll have our priorities reversed." According to Jiang Pingji's original plan, her battlefield would be the northern borderline and the north of Dongqing. She had no time to care about the southern region for the time being. Without Huang Song, there will still be LV Song or He Song. Only by being strong can we be fearless. Therefore, Jiang Pingji still insisted on her own opinion. Next spring, they would conquer Wanzhou. As long as they occupied Wanzhou, along with the nearby Chongzhou and Hu County that was secretly controlled by Lu Shi, the 3 places would be connected. When the time came, they would have money, food, manpower, and soldiers. Then, they could restrain the cavalry. It was not impossible to defeat the northern borderline. What were the benefits of defeating the northern borderline? Not only were there rich mineral resources, countless gold, silver, and jewelry, but there were also vast territories and commercial areas. There were also countless horse farms and elite warhorses. The horse farms in Dongqing were concentrated in Zhangzhou. If they could not conquer Zhangzhou or obtain the support of the Meng family in Zhangzhou, the cavalry would not be of any use. If they could encroach on the northern borderline, with the horse farms and elite warhorses, would they have to worry about not being able to form a cavalry? With the cavalry, it would be a piece of cake to turn around and attack the forces in Dongqing. Feng Zhen looked at Jiang Pingji seriously. He sighed in his heart. This child had a firm heart and was not moved by external factors. She had the appearance of a wise ruler. This winter, I'll have to trouble you again. After spring, we will prepare for war in Wanzhou. Does anyone have any objections? Feng Jin and Su Ke's expressions changed drastically. They seemed to recall the fear of working overtime last winter. Only Feng Zhen, who did not understand the situation, replied with a smile, "How would I dare to refuse the Lord's request? But, my lord, don't forget our previous agreement." They had to hold on to the support of eating, drinking, and having fun. This was their meal ticket in the future. Jiang Pingji returned a light smile. Of course. How could I forget what I promised Zisher? Su Ke gave Feng Jin a look and inquired about the situation. What shady dealings did the Lord and Feng Zhen have with each other? Feng Jin secretly sighed and mumbled to himself. Su Ke almost choked from laughing. How can you take my lord's words seriously? Su Ke laughed and ridiculed him. My lord often says these things, but she doesn't know that the government office is always busy. They are only busy for a short period of time throughout the year, and that short period of time is a year. How can there be time for him to eat, drink, and have fun? Feng Jin said, Isn't that so? Throughout the year, there are only 7 days of rest before and after the new year. However, during these 7 days, the eateries, gambling dens, brothels, and southern courtyards are all closed, preparing to celebrate the new year with their families. The shops are all closed. I don't know where he is going to enjoy himself. Sigh, another one who has been fooled by the Lord. I don't know when he will find out the truth. I'm afraid it won't be too late. The two looked at each other and smiled. They saw the gloating look in each other's eyes. In Qingan district, Wei Xi also received the news that Qing Jing had pledged allegiance to Huang Song. He could only lament about fate. Yang Xi was a man with sharp eyes. His evaluation of Huang Song and Qing Jing was not much different from what Jiang Pingji had said. Wei Xi responded with silence. Yang Xi said, You and Qing Jing are brothers from the same sect. If you fight in the future, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Wei Xi said indifferently, In terms of difficulty, can it be more difficult than the brothers Huayu and Fingjue? It was not just Feng Jin and Fingjue. The two brothers' eldest brother assisted another person. It was obvious that the three brothers were hurting each other's hearts. Then why do you look sad? Wei Xi did not answer. How could he answer? Could he tell Yang Xi that he was silent only because Qing Jing had also served Huang Song in his previous life? Qing Jing was imprisoned when Huang Song's power was at its peak. Because the ruler and his ministers had different opinions, the conflict became more and more acute. The conflict of many years erupted and could not be resolved. In the end, Qing Jing was imprisoned for more than 2 years. When Huang Song was defeated and committed suicide, Qing Jing heard the news and finally committed suicide in prison. Chapter 575. Yang Xi pinched his chin and said, don't you have a wide social circle in Langi Academy? Think of a way to deceive a few more people. Your lord has been studying at Langi Academy for 3 years. Classmates are more reliable than other relationships. It's better to help him than Huang Song. Wei Xiai smiled bitterly. He didn't want to be deceived. It was obvious that it was difficult to recruit him. In Qing Jing's previous life, his lord, Huang Song, committed suicide. He also committed suicide in prison. The person who defeated Huang Song was Jiang Pingji. In Lu Zhang's previous life, after his lord became the emperor, she personally led the army. In the end, Her Majesty led thousands of elites to attack and beheaded him. Several princes fought for power, but they were devoured by Jiang Pingji one by one. Lu Jing chose to surrender for the sake of the people in the city, but he chose to climb the city wall and jump down. He swore before he died, which became a debt of blood that Jiang Pingji couldn't erase. In Han Yu's previous life, although his lord was killed, he accepted the offer of amnesty. He thought he could live out his life peacefully, but when he was middle-aged, his wife and her family secretly plotted a rebellion in the palace. They wanted to change the regime. Unfortunately, he was stupid and the plot was exposed. Han Yu was implicated and committed suicide by swallowing gold. In Wei Xi's previous life. Let's not talk about him. Anyway, he killed himself in the end. Thinking about it, the death of Master Yuanjing's disciples was related to Her Majesty. As for the other students who came out of Langi Academy, they were either dead or injured. Wei Xi really wanted to pull all the classmates he knew over. At least he could avoid a bloody battle, right? But with his lord's temper, not all counselors were suitable for her. The relationship between the ruler and the minister was not one-way, but two-way. Only when both were suitable could it be a good story. For example, Huang Song was also a future lord. In Wei Xi's previous life, he was only one step away from being the ruler of the world. Master Yuanjing once said that Qing Jing was a talented assistant to the king, a minister who saved the world. When these two met, it should be a strong alliance, but what happened? The relationship between Huang Song and Qing Jing broke down. The latter was imprisoned for more than 2 years and finally committed suicide for his lord. The best talent might not be the best choice. His lord only needed to choose someone who could truly assist her. Everyone has their own aspirations, we can't force them, Wei Xi said. He was wholeheartedly thinking for Jiang Pingji. Naturally, he had to choose the best and most suitable helpers for her. He could forget about those who would drag her down. Having been reborn, Wei Xi was very open-minded. Yang Si clicked his tongue and said mockingly, I think it's most likely because your master wasn't very popular during his studies, right? Why is it that your lord has more potential than Huang Song, but Qing Jing thinks more highly of Huang Song? Think about your lord's unforgiving mouth. TSK, let's make an irresponsible assumption. Could it be that your lord had severely offended Qing Jing when he was studying in the academy? Wei Xi was speechless. He avoided the topic and focused on the trivial. Yumo finished his apprenticeship a long time ago. When my lord was in Langi County, the two of them should not have met. Since they had never met before, there was naturally no problem of not offending him. However, Jiang Pingji was studying in Langi. Wei Xi spent most of his time outside, but it did not mean that he did not care about the matters of the academy. In terms of popularity, his lord was not very popular in Langi Academy. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. His lord's character was rather casual. Most of the students in the academy were serious people who conformed to the rules and did things by the book. The latter naturally looked down on Jiang Pingji's casual behavior and style. They even wished they could cover their noses and pass by. However, in terms of friends, she also had friends who were relatively close to her. It was just that most of them were fair-weather friends who drank and drank together. Yang Si rested his chin on his hand and said, "Sigh, that's probably not fated. However, I heard that Qing Jing's talent is no less than that of Prime Minister Huang Fu of the previous dynasty. Are you really not worried that Qing Jing will help Huang Song gain a foothold in the north? When that time comes, he will be a huge problem." Wei Ci said, "Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice." "What do you mean?" "They lack money." Wei Ci smiled and said, "They won't be developing quickly in a short period of time. Their momentum won't be strong." Yang Si said, "That may not be true. I've learned about Huang Song from Prince Changshu. This person's family really doesn't lack money. Huang Song's grandmother was originally a widowed woman from a poor family. Because of her beautiful appearance, Huang Tan took a fancy to her. Huang Tan took her as his wife and adopted the son of the widow's ex-husband, who was Huang Song's father. He treated Huang Song like his own son. Huang Tan doted on Huang Song like his own grandson. Huang Song's father used Huang Tan's connections in the court to do a lot of business deals. He made a lot of money and was very wealthy. Huang Tan's power was overwhelming. He secretly diverted the national treasury. Wasn't the business of a few generations for the sake of their descendants? The savings of Huang Tan and Huang Song's father were ultimately given to Huang Song. Huang Song's family was supported by Huang Tan and had improved a lot in the past few years. Huang Song lacked manpower, but he definitely did not lack money. Now that he had the help of two heavyweights, Feng Zhu and Qing Jing, he would probably not lack manpower in the near future. Wei Ci smiled and said, "What I mean is, Huang Song is not as rich as my lord." In his previous life, Huang Song did develop rapidly and occupied a large piece of fertile land in the north of Dongqing. Wei Ci was really not very worried. Jiang Pingji's starting point in her previous life was very low, but she still managed to rise to the top. Now that she had such a good start, there was no reason for her to fail miserably. Huang Song is very smart. Without absolute confidence, he will not take the initiative to provoke a strong enemy. Wei Ci and Jiang Pingji had the same opinion. They should concentrate on developing their own strength. Only then could they occupy a place in this chaotic world. In the short term, they probably won't go against each other. Not only would they not go against each other, but the two families might even form an alliance and cooperate for a while. Just as Wei Ci had this idea, Qing Jing was also persuading Huang Song to build a good relationship with Jiang Pingji. Qing Jing looked at the entire great universal geographical map and said in a low voice, "The situation in the north seems to have taken shape. Lu Shi has occupied Chongzhou. Hu County is his old nest that he has operated for many years. According to his methods, even if he gives it up, Hu County will still be in Lu Shi's hands. Hu County used to be a barren land and unruly rivers. It did not belong to any prefecture. Its area was slightly larger than the smallest prefecture in Dongqing. Now it was Dongqing's largest county in terms of production. Chongzhou, Hu County, and a third of Wanzhou, which Jiang Pingji occupied. The power in the north was basically in the hands of the Lu family father and son. If my lord wants to compete with Lu Shi, don't fight with him before the situation is developed. You should focus on the south. Although the Lu family father and son occupy the north, the three tribes of the northern borderline are still eyeing the north covetously. They have no time to care about the power in the south. This is a good opportunity for my lord." Huang Song sighed and said, "But Yumo, Prince Changshu and Qinzhou are still competing in the south. We can't afford to offend either of them. When the immortals fought, the mortals suffered. Two skinny camels were still bigger than a horse." Huang Song was really no match for them. Qing Jing smiled faintly and said, not necessarily. When Prince Changshu and Qinzhou fought, it was hard to determine a winner, but this also meant that both sides were exhausting each other's strength. Chapter 576. Huang Song thought about Jiang Pingji's character and said with a bitter face, even though the three tribes of the north borderline are keeping an eye on him, Lu Shi has a strange temperament and does unexpected things. Last year, he was still the district magistrate of Xiangyang district. Now, he has occupied Fengyi County and doesn't care about the imperial edict. If she were to attack Huang Song on a whim, Huang Song would not be able to defend himself. Qing Jing said, the news of Anyaina's second princess consort's sudden death has spread to the three tribes of the north borderline. The barbarians have coveted the central plains for a long time. Latest by next spring, when the grass is plentiful, they will gather their troops to attack Dongqing. Isn't Lu Shi's Chongzhou the first to be attacked? Lu Shi was inevitable when the three tribes of the north borderline attacked Dongqing. Now, Chongzhou was probably already actively preparing for war against the cavalry of the three tribes of the north borderline. Why would they care about Huang Song? Lu Shi was Lu Shi's father. If his father was in danger, Lu Shi would probably go bankrupt to resist the cavalry of the north borderline. In comparison, Huang Song did not have such pressure from foreign enemies. Even if Huang Song developed later than Lu Shi, this gap could be made up for. Lu Shi and his son were tied down by the three tribes of the north borderline. Whether they won or lost, the price they would pay would not be small. Under such circumstances, it was still unknown who was stronger between Huang Song and Lu Shi. Huang Song was originally a little depressed, but after Qing Jing's analysis, he gained some confidence and regained his vigor. Seeing this, Feng Ju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, losing Yang Si was indeed a big blow to Huang Song. Now that Qing Jing had arrived, it could be considered to have made up for the loss. The others were also on their way. Huang Song even sent invitations to his family members. A few talented people came one after another. When everything was on the right track, Huang Song's power would develop rapidly and the Dongqing royal family would be at the end of their road. Huang Song and Qing Jing talked in detail for a long time and felt like old friends at first sight. Qing Jing said, I heard that Huaijia's second brother, Feng Jin, is under Lu Shi. Huang Song tensed up while Feng Ju furrowed his brows. Huang Song said, everyone has their own master. Huaijia is Huaijia and Feng Jin is Feng Jin. Yumo, don't be suspicious. Qing Jing smiled and said, I'm not suspecting Huaijia. I'm just worried that Lu Shi will send troops to Wanzhou next spring, and Xiangyang County will collapse on its own. If Xiangyang County also surrendered, Qingde County would be the only one left and Lu Shi could easily take it. Huang Song was stunned and could not react for a moment. Why? Feng Ju understood that the key was still Feng Jin. Qing Jing explained, the Feng family's ancestral home is in Xiangyang County, which is now the Shangjing region. The county governor of Xiangyang County has an extremely good relationship with the Feng family. Feng Jin is the second son of the Feng clan. With this relationship and the fact that Lu Shi has a powerful weapon in his hands, it's hard to guarantee that the Feng clan won't come forward to persuade him. The Feng family was one of the four noble families of Dongqing and was the local tyrant of Xiangyang County. Even the county chief had to submit to them. The attitude of the Feng family could greatly affect the final fate of Xiangyang County. If Xiangyang County stubbornly defends the city, even if the city is breached in the end, Lu Shi will at least bleed a little. If the city collapses on its own, this person's power will be preserved to the greatest extent. Qing Jing smiled and said, I am more inclined to think that Lu Shi can take advantage of the situation. The aristocratic families were used to judging the situation and doing things flawlessly. In the face of a powerful army pressing down on their borders, naturally, submitting was the best option. Not to mention that Feng Jin was working under Lu Shi. For the Feng family, the benefits of submitting were far greater than resisting to the death. If they knew that it was impossible to do, they would be brainless and definitely not an aristocratic family. Qing Jing chose Huang Song not only because Huang Song was more in line with his temperament and was closer to the image of a wise ruler in his heart. Another important reason was that Lu Shi seemed to be doing well now, but in reality, he was walking on a tightrope. The slightest sign of trouble could lead to eternal damnation. Were the three tribes of the north borderline just for show? The more glorious Lu Shi was now, the more pressure he would face in the future when he faced the oppression of the three tribes of the north borderline. In comparison, Huang Song was more in line with his expectations. However, all of this was based on the fact that the three tribes of the north borderline had the ability to invade the south. Did the north borderline have the ability to invade the south? Wei Xi smiled without saying a word. At the beginning of the 11th month of the 20th year of Tian Wu, there was a horse plague in the northern borders. The war horses died of the disease, and only 1 out of 10 survived. He still remembered that in his previous life, the three tribes of the northern borderline had been sharpening their swords to attack the central plains, but a few Fergana stallions from Shalan had caused an unprecedented large-scale horse plague. Countless warhorses died of the disease, with less than 1 or 2 survivors. The combat power of the cavalry was almost completely destroyed. By the time the three tribes of the northern borderline recovered from the blow of the horse plague, the central plains was already in full swing, with several feudal vassals supporting them. The three tribes of the northern borderline launched a sneak attack on Jiang Pingji's lair behind her. Coincidentally, Qiguan Rang was the one who stayed behind to guard the lair, so the three tribes of the northern borderline did not gain much of an advantage. When Jiang Pingji returned from the war, she exploded in anger. She took her weapons and went to the north borderline, temporarily escaping from the chaotic war in the central plains. Oh, then the north borderline was dumbfounded by Jiang Pingji's mad dog style of fighting. Her Majesty was now more powerful than she had been in her previous life. Once she unified the north, she could take the initiative to attack the three tribes of the northern borderline before they could recover. There was a saying that went, "Take advantage of your illness to kill you." Thinking of the rich horse farms and countless mineral resources of the three tribes of the northern borderline, Wei Xi almost smiled until his eyes were squinted. Every time he saw Wei Xi smile so viciously, Yang Xi could not help but have goosebumps all over his body. On the other side, Jiang Pingji almost exploded in anger. She temporarily did not have time to care about the horse plague in the northern borderline. She only wanted to know which B*TCH had impregnated her white. The war horses had all been gelded, how could white be pregnant? Could it be that the stableman had done something deranged? Stop licking, I'm asking serious questions. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to stroke White's mane, a smile still on her face. She turned her head and stared fiercely at the stableman who was in charge of the stable. White rubbed Jiang Pingji's face innocently, sticking out its tongue to lick her from time to time. Its tone was a little heavy. Jiang Pingji lost all her anger, allowing White to express its affection freely. Since the last battle, Jiang Pingji rarely took White out for a walk. It was no wonder that the little girl missed her so much. She wanted to go hunting today, get some game, and have a barbecue and hot pot with her friends in the government office. The stableman pulled White out. She took a look and almost exploded in anger. Dian Yan nimbly pressed the stableman to the ground and waited for Jiang Pingji's orders. The stableman trembled with fear and said, "My lord, I don't know what happened." Jiang Pingji's gaze shifted to White's belly. She could already see that it was pregnant. She also felt a weak fluctuation in its body. It was obviously pregnant. However, the war horses had all been gelded. White had very high requirements for its partner. Every spring, there were male horses who asked for love, but they were all kicked away by the little girl. It was late autumn now, how could it be pregnant? Jiang Pingji reached out and touched White's belly. She could vaguely feel something. Mammals were much more vigilant during pregnancy. Whoever touched a mare's belly was guaranteed to be rewarded with a hoof. However, White trusted Jiang Pingji very much. Its temper was still docile. Well, this was only limited to Jiang Pingji. To others, it was a tsundere queen. Whoever provoked it, it would kick them. Are there any clean male horses in the stable? Chapter 577. The audience in the streaming room was dumbfounded. They wanted to watch Jiang Pingji hunt and roast game. They didn't know how the plot had developed to this point. Why did she suddenly say that she wanted to seduce a stallion? A friend who lived in the northern grasslands was experienced and explained the reason. Han Mei de June, is Lady White going to be a mother? When the bullet screen was posted, everyone was silent for a while. Then, they exploded. Moon Yo Lumi, F***CK. Bring me my 40-meter knife. Which shameless stallion impregnated my daughter White? Did he get my permission? Streamer, you don't have to do anything. I can castrate that shameless stallion. Pipe eats pie paw, no. Wait a minute, our White is a girl. Isn't it a handsome young man? Nuwa is not a Nuwa, Gaga. White is such a handsome horse, isn't it a handsome young man? I really like how it cooperates with the streamer in battle. When it raises its hooves and kicks people, it can shatter a person's sternum with one kick. Such a fierce horse is actually a girl. Yuseo Shingu, #despise. The streamer is such a fierce guy, but she's a girl. Why can't White be a girl? Jiang Pingji comforted the affectionate White while she questioned the stableman sternly. White was her mount. It wasn't spring now. How could she put a stallion that hadn't been tempered in her White stable? Her Dubai's exclusive VIP stable wasn't something that any horse could stay in. The stableman looked up with a surprised expression. He stuttered, there is indeed such a stallion, bring it out. I'll lick it myself. Jiang Pingji turned her face away to avoid White's affectionate tongue as she fumed. It was hard to bear a beauty's kindness. After a few rounds, she felt that her hair was about to be licked off by White. The stableman refused to move. Jiang Pingji frowned and asked sternly, what's wrong? My orders don't work. Seeing that Jiang Pingji was really angry, the stableman said in fear and trepidation, please forgive me, my lord. It's just that horse. That horse is a rare, fine horse. I thought that my lord asked me to put it in the same stable as White in order to match-make the two of them. Jiang Pingji was confused. Ha! In that split second, Dubai's tongue had already lapped a circle around her cheek. This stable driver was also a horse lover. In the past 2 years, he had even treated the mighty and majestic Dubai as his own daughter. Every day, he would cut the freshest and highest quality horse grass for Dubai to eat, so that it could maintain its glossy and beautiful appearance and maintain its healthiest state. More than a month ago, the caravan presented a mixed-blood horse from the northern borderline as a tribute. The young man was very handsome. The stableman was also trembling with fear as he asked what to do with the stallion. It was not molted at such an age, so it was obvious that it was kept as a stud to breed better offspring. Jiang Pingji's answer was to put it directly in White's stable, so the stableman did as he was told. After listening to the coachman's aggrieved narration, Jiang Pingji finally recalled the memories of that period of time. Jiang Pingji rubbed the space between her brows with a slight headache. War horses around 2 years old had all been molted. Before the steward of the treasure house presented the horse, he only said that it was a war horse from the northern borderline with excellent bloodlines. Its sire was a Fergana horse from Shalan, but he did not say that the horse had not been molted. War horses that had not been molted had explosive temperaments and were extremely difficult to tame. If it was the spring season, it would be even more difficult to control. Jiang Pingji originally wanted to wait for Li Yun to return before giving him this good horse, but now it seemed that it was impossible. She was not sure how good Li Yun's horsemanship was, and she did not want him to take the risk to tame a wild and untamed horse. The stableman asked with trepidation, "My lord, do I still need to bring Little White over?" Little White? The corners of Jiang Pingji's mouth were slightly out of control. Bring it over. The stableman did as he was told. When she saw the horse with the word "good" written on it from head to toe, Jiang Pingji finally understood why it was called Little White. When Dabai saw Little White, he took 2 steps forward and rubbed against it. It responded warmly, even its steps were extremely graceful. This horse really hasn't been molted. She had never seen such a graceful and obedient stallion. Little White's build was slightly more muscular than Dabai. Its fur was also snow white without a trace of other colors. Standing beside Dabai, they looked like biological sisters. Seeing Dabai take the initiative, she was momentarily speechless. She was speechless, but the audience in the streaming room could help her ridicule. Can't think of me my daughter Dabai is indeed a queen. It must have tamed Little White. Casually take one, of course. Actually, at Dabai's current age, she is considered a leftover woman among the horses. Little White seems to be only a little over 2 years old. It's a little fresh meat. The baby of these two must have a very good bloodline. Streamer, please don't break them up. Still sound nice. Generally speaking, war horses in ancient times were molted. They were easy to tame and manage. They would keep the stallions with the best bloodline and in the best condition as stud horses to breed strong offspring. Although Little White is a little delicate, it is still the descendant of a Fergana horse and a war horse from the northern borderline. It may not be pure blood, but it is still the second generation. Streamer, please don't bully it. Jiang Pingji frowned and asked the stableman how much a stallion from the horse farm in the northern borderline cost. The stableman did not know about the situation in the northern borderline, but he had heard about the price of a stallion from the Tsang Prefecture horse farm. A stallion with a good bloodline cost around 100,000 strings of coins. This was a good stallion found from outside. If it was a stallion from the farm, the price would definitely not be so expensive. Jiang Pingji was stunned for a moment. She glanced at Little White. The stallion seemed to be a little afraid of strangers. It shrunk behind Dabai. Jiang Pingji asked, "What about this one?" The stableman said, "I have inquired about it from the caravan. Little White seems to have been bought for 150,000 strings of coins." A stallion worth 150,000 strings of coins. Why does it look so scared and timid? Jiang Pingji took a deep breath and said, "Forget it. I won't do it." After a while, she asked, "You have a lot of experience in raising horses. What do you think of Little White's body? Is it sick? What stallion would be so shy and timid?" It was as delicate as a lady from a noble family among horses. Her Dabai, on the other hand, looked like a domineering CEO. Jiang Pingji was really a little worried about a horse from the northern borderline. However, she sensed that its body condition was very good. The stableman hurriedly said, "No, Little White's body condition is excellent." Jiang Pingji was silent for a moment, then she sneered and said, I have never seen a war horse with such a timid temper. Dabai was pregnant. It was not good for Jiang Pingji to ride it to hunt. She simply asked someone to put a saddle and stirrup on Little White. The stableman said in a panic, My lord, you can't. This horse has not been tamed. If it accidentally startles my lord. Chapter 578. Did Little White have the ability to throw Jiang Pingji off the horse? Reality proved that it had the heart but not the guts. Animal senses were far stronger than humans. The more intelligent an animal was, the stronger it was. When ordinary people faced Jiang Pingji's aura, they would only feel that this person's aura was as tall as 2.8 meters. She was dignified and unfathomable. But in the eyes of these animals, it was a naked threat, as if they had met their most terrifying natural enemy. Not to mention Little White, a horse that grew up on a horse farm. Even a wild horse would involuntarily be afraid when it met Jiang Pingji. Why did Jiang Pingji like Feng Jin's Chongqing so much? Because when children are ignorant, they are as sensitive as animals. Chongqing was not afraid of her, but was close to her. Of course she liked it. Similarly, Little White was so obedient, she could not dislike it. Little White knew that a wise man submits to circumstances. It ran fast and steadily, and did not make any mistakes in its commands. Jiang Pingji rode it to hunt. She thought it would be frightened by the prey, but it proved that it was not timid. Small prey occasionally jumped out of the bushes, but it was calm and composed. Its endurance, running speed, and posture, all these qualities did not disappoint its bloodline. Jiang Pingji rode on Little White's back, holding White's reins in her hand. While hunting, she walked White to let it have some fresh air. It stayed in the stable all day, and White was pregnant. If it did not go out to get some fresh air, who could control it if it got angry? After running one round, Little White's performance was satisfactory. Jiang Pingji allowed it to stay in the VIP stable of her White family. Jiang Pingji returned with a full load of prey. It was the season when the prey was plump, and barbecued had a special taste. However, White is pregnant. Keep an eye on it. She instructed the stableman who took care of White, if Little White is restless, separate them. The stableman nodded and bowed, hurriedly agreeing. White was reluctantly led back to the stable by the stableman. Along the way, it looked back 3 times, making Jiang Pingji feel extremely guilty. This was a small episode. Jiang Pingji told Li Yun and the rest about it as an interesting story. The construction of Maolin District, Chang'an District, and Jiaoping District was still in full swing. Because they had absorbed a large number of refugees and escaped members of the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus Group in the past 6 months, in addition to the prisoners of war that they had previously captured, there was no shortage of people in all aspects of construction. Everyone had survived the busiest period, and the rest of the matters could be handled according to the regulations. Qiguan Rang and the rest could finally take a break from their busy schedule and slightly relax. After settling the matters in each district, the few of them sneaked back to Xiangyang District for 2 days. Li Yun was originally busy in Maolin District. Later on, it was decided that Chang'an District would be used as a trial district for farming. He was transferred to Chang'an District to help out. This fellow is extremely talented in farming. In the past half a year, the reclamation and distribution of wasteland has been completed. Hearing that Dabai was pregnant, and that the stallion was an excellent warhorse with half of the Shalan nation's Fergana horse bloodline, he couldn't help but be tempted. Master, Jiang Pingji flipped the roasted meat and asked, what's wrong? If Great White gives birth, can I reward the foal it gives birth to? Just as Li Yun opened his mouth, a sharp gaze focused on him. Which man doesn't love horses? Debai's quality is obvious. The stallion is a valiant warhorse with the bloodline of the Fergana horse. How bad can the offspring of the two be? For a military general, if he can obtain a warhorse that is full of spirituality, of excellent quality, and is connected to his heart, it will be like adding wings to a tiger on the battlefield. It is hard to find even with money. The moment Li Yun opened his mouth, he reserved a good horse with great potential in advance. He hated himself for not speaking up earlier. Li Yun actually snatched it first. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "All right, if you like it, you can take it away." "Thank you, master." Li Yun's cheeks were flushed with joy. It was unknown whether it was because he drank too much or because he was too happy. A family of people roasting meat in the government office. The scene was too beautiful, and the style was too strange. It was Yang Xi's first time in Xiangyang district. It was also his first time participating in a gathering of this nature. Yes, it was also his first time using the glass grill that was hard to find outside to roast meat. He felt that the value of every piece of meat was elevated. He squinted his eyes and swept his gaze across Jiang Pingji's subordinates. He frowned slightly. Logically speaking, the northern borderline situation was precarious. Why were these people not the least bit nervous? Instead, they ate the roasted meat with gusto. Especially Feng Zhen, who was dressed in old clothes and had drunk so much that his eyes were misty. It was as if his bones had gone soft. He leaned against Wei Xiai. Wei Xiai sighed. It was not good to push Feng Zhen away. When the roasted meat was almost finished, Qiguan rang and the others looked at each other. Then, Feng Jin was pushed out. He bowed and said, "Master, according to the news from Chongzhou, the northern borderline has already prepared their troops. How should we deal with them?" The few strategists returned from the other 3 districts not only to eat this roasted meat, but also to discuss countermeasures. Jiang Pingji chewed the meat in her mouth a few times and swallowed it. She said rather straightforwardly, "Different situations call for different measures. What else can we do?" Everyone was speechless. Feng Jin sighed and could not help but say intimately, "Master, don't joke with me. I'm being serious. I'm being serious too. We're having a gathering to eat roasted meat. What's the use of talking about such annoying matters?" Jiang Pingji said nonchalantly. Yang Xi and Feng Zhen subconsciously frowned. So unreliable. Wei Xiai smiled and tried to smooth things over. "Master, you have a countermeasure in mind. It's indeed not suitable to do it at this gathering and dampen everyone's spirits." Feng Jin secretly glanced at Wei Xiai. His expression was natural, as if Jiang Pingji really had a countermeasure. Jiang Pingji said, "I'm waiting for the news. If the news is true, everyone will have a good time this year. There's no need to worry about the threat from the northern borderline. There's no need for them to find trouble with us next year. In 2 years, we'll take the initiative to find trouble with the northern borderline. It's important to eat and drink and enjoy ourselves to the fullest." Yang Xi secretly glanced at Wei Xiai. He had a feeling that Wei Xiai and his master had reached an unspeakable tacit understanding. What news is District Magistrate Liu waiting for? Yang Xi had not pledged allegiance, so he addressed Jiang Pingji differently from others. News from the racecourse in the northern borderline. As soon as Jiang Pingji's voice fell, a messenger came in from outside. He half knelt on the ground and raised a bamboo slip with both hands as a token. She smiled. There was not a hint of anger on her face. She said, "I'll go take a look. Is it good news or bad news?" Opening it, the contents of the letter made her lips curl up. Wei Xiai asked, "Is it good or bad?" "Of course it's good," Jiang Pingji said. Now, the northern borderline will not be able to jump around. It was true that the butterfly effect had changed many things, but some symbolic events still happened as promised. Shalon was thousands of miles away from the northern borderline and even further away from the hinterland of the Central Plains. They chose the best Fergana horses from their country to sell to the northern borderline. How could they have known that these horses would be infected with a horse plague during the transportation? The horse plague had an incubation period. A few horses died along the way, but the horse dealers did not notice. They just thought that the horses were not used to the foreign environment. How could they have known that they had been infected? Chapter 579. Due to the special nature of warhorses, most stallions would be castrated. Castrated warhorses were more docile, easier to tame, and easier to control. A small number of excellent stallions would be kept as breeding stallions to ensure that the next generation would be of the highest quality. This generation's king of the northern borderline royal court was not a wise man, but he was ambitious and could listen to the advice of others. Under the advice of the wise man, he integrated the business alliance and tightly controlled the resources of the horse farm in the hands of the royal court. He could not easily sell the warhorses. The former prevented external business impacts and strengthened the local business competitiveness. The latter increased the military strength of the northern border and the prestige and rule of the imperial court. In the past, as long as he had money, he could buy enough good warhorses from the northern borderline horse farm, but now he couldn't. In order to provide the warriors of the northern borderline with better warhorses and improve their overall combat effectiveness, the imperial court of the northern borderline would allocate a sum of money to purchase Fergana horses from Shalon every year. They would then rent these horses to the major horse farms, and the second-generation warhorses that were bred were not allowed to be sold. The three tribes of the northern borderline had always relied on cavalry as their main combat power. Relying on this method, their combat power skyrocketed. Before the fall of the Great Xia dynasty, the three tribes of the northern borderline treated the Great Xia dynasty as their suzerain while they themselves were their vassal states. They paid tribute to the Great Xia dynasty every year and called themselves their subjects. Now that the Xia kingdom was destroyed, the 9 states were divided into 5 countries. The 4 tribes of Nanman, which used to be a vassal state like the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, had destroyed the royal family of the Nanshan kingdom a year ago and occupied half of the Nanshan kingdom. From being a vassal state, they had turned the tables and occupied the territory of the sovereign state. This made the 3 tribes of the northern borderline much more confident and ambitious. If the barbarians of the 4 factions of Nanman could do it, why couldn't they, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, do it? Dongxing failed to live up to expectations and was in constant civil strife. It was the best time for the northern borderline to send troops to the Central Plains and conquer the world. In order to cultivate more combat power, the royal court of the northern borderline purchased more Fergana horses from Shalon every year. In the beginning, he only used 1 or 2 horses to test the waters. Now, there were more than 10 or 20 of them. He had planned to buy 35 of them this year. Unfortunately, the Fergana horses were delicate, and some of them died on the way. Even so, the northern borderline still bought 19 Fergana horses and loaned them out according to the size of the farm. Then, according to the usual practice in previous years, the stud farm bred the stallions and mares. Because the management of the stud farm was excellent and the weather in the northern borderline was not bad, the mares were in heat all year round. The Fergana horses sent by Shalon were all around 4 years old, which was the golden age for breeding. The Fergana horses rented by the northern borderline imperial court had a time limit, and the horse farm did not dare to waste time. This was the busiest time of the year for the stud farm. Of course, the ones who were busy were the slaves who took care of the horses. There was only a very small amount of time that they could take a break from their busy schedule. 3 to 5 slaves gathered together and whispered. "Don't you think it's strange? Why do these Fergana horses feel particularly dull this year?" Another slave said, "It's because they're not used to the climate. Besides, they've always been sent in spring or summer in the past. This year, they're late, so naturally they won't be as strong." That's true. It was not easy to be a stud horse. There were hundreds and thousands of maras that were of the right age to be pregnant, but the stud farm was only allocated 1 or 2 Fergana horses. About half a month later, the slaves taking care of the Fergana horses were horrified to find that one of the horses had fallen to the ground without warning. They called the veterinarian, and only then did they discover that the horse was seriously ill. It was fine before, how could it? The slaves were so anxious that they broke out in a cold sweat, and their teeth chattered in fear. As slaves of the stud farm, their value was not even as important as the mane of a Fergana horse when they were tied up in a bundle. Now that their precious Fergana horses were sick, they would not be able to absolve themselves of the blame even if they died 10,000 times. Something even more worrying happened. This seriously ill Fergana horse was still vomiting blood, and its skin was always showing bruises and bruises. The stud farm thought that the slaves had secretly injured the Fergana horses, and was furious. They immediately disposed of a group of slaves. The veterinarian did everything he could to treat it, but the horse still died of illness. The corpse soon rotted and stank, and the smell was extremely strong, attracting many insects and mosquitoes. A Fergana horse was worth as much as 400,000 to 500,000 strings of coins. Who wouldn't feel heartache for losing so much money when one died? Because these Fergana horses were rented from the northern borderline imperial court, the stud farm had to take full responsibility and compensate for the losses. In the end, none of the slaves taking care of the Fergana horses could escape. They were all brutally killed and buried with the horses. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline had the custom of sky burial. The Fergana horse was diagnosed by the veterinarian as suffering from a strange disease, so it was also given a sky burial. This seemed to be the beginning. Just half a month after the death of this Fergana horse, news came from another stud farm that a Fergana horse was seriously ill. The symptoms of the second horse were exactly the same as the first one. There had never been a horse plague in the northern borderline, so they naturally didn't think of the symptoms of these 2 sick horses in this direction. Even if they did, they would deny it. As far as they knew, horses with horse plague would get sick in 7 or 8 days at most, and those with acute symptoms would show signs of serious illness in 1 or 2 days. They had only heard of horse plague from the horse traders of Shalon, and there was no such thing in the northern borderline. These Fergana horses had traveled thousands of miles from Shalon for almost a year, and after arriving at the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, they had been breeding at the stud farm for more than half a month. There was no sign of illness at all, and at most, they were a little listless. If it were a horse plague, they would have died a long time ago. Little did they know that there were different kinds of horse plague. The horse plague in Shalon was acute, and symptoms were bound to appear within half a month of infection. The mortality rate was more than 90%. This time, the source of the horse plague was not in Shalon, but on the way. Even the horse traders of Shalon didn't know when they got infected. The incubation period was extremely long. Depending on the physical fitness and resistance of the horse, the incubation period ranged from 1 to 4 months. Of course, once the disease broke out, it meant that the condition was so serious that it was impossible to save it. For example, the first Fergana horse that died of illness. Its internal organs were almost full of extravasated blood and thick fluid, and its skin was covered with large areas of extravasated blood. Therefore, the owner of the stud farm suspected that the slaves secretly vented their anger on the Fergana horse and beat it until it was seriously injured. More importantly, the carcass of this sick horse needed to be cremated, otherwise insects, mosquitoes, and flies would spread the disease to other hosts. For example, Horses, mules, and donkeys were all susceptible hosts. Among them, pregnant mares and weak young horses were the most susceptible. With the second one, there would naturally be a third and a fourth. There was almost no time gap. At this moment, the breeding at the stud farm was basically coming to an end. The successive deaths of the Fergana horses attracted the attention of the royal court of the northern borderline. The king of the royal court ordered a thorough investigation of the matter. It was only then that everyone remembered the horse traders of Shalon, except that they had already left 2 months ago after receiving the money. Before they could investigate, all kinds of bad news came from the stud farm. The 19 horses bought at a high price all died, leaving no survivors. Each of the 19 Fergana horses cost between 450,000 to 600,000 strings of coins. For them, the royal court allocated at least 10 million strings of gold, silver, and jewelry. Now that they had all died after just one round of breeding, who would compensate for this loss? Faced with this loss, the king of the royal court of the northern borderline roared in anger. Chapter 580. The source of horse plague was spread by insects and flies, and the host's physical constitution directly affected the incubation period. Northern Borderline advocated sky burial, and the corpses of the Fergana horses were left to rot on the ground and become food for insects, birds, and beasts. The stud farm was not a clean and dust-free place, and the slaves would not be on guard against those small insects. It was conceivable how terrible the horse plague would be if it really spread. The royal court of northern borderline was cheated of a huge sum of 10 million strings of coins by the horse dealers of Shalon. Fortunately, all the mares had been bred, and more than 1,000 mares were found to be pregnant successfully, barely recovering some losses. Otherwise, the royal court of northern borderline would have really suffered a great loss this time. However, the bad luck did not end there. About half a month later, the previously pregnant mares had a high fever, and their whole body seemed to be swollen. They breathed like a cow, and occasionally coughed violently. Their nostrils were wide open, and a lot of mucus with foamy liquid flowed out. It was obviously seriously ill. The slave taking care of the pregnant mares was so scared that he hurriedly reported the matter. The slave trembled, and his body shook like a sieve. He kept begging for mercy, for fear that he would also be secretly dealt with. Could it be that the disease of the mares was caused by the Fergana horses? The owner of the stud farm looked gloomy. The mares lay on the ground of the stable, breathing heavily, but their bodies were swollen as if they had been filled with water. They were so sick that even a blind man could see that the pregnant horse was seriously ill. Can it still be saved? The veterinarian shook his head helplessly with a bitter face. Ordinary minor diseases could be treated, but it was really impossible to save a fatal disease like this. The owner of the stud farm secretly clenched his teeth, and his eyes seemed to be shooting venom. They had already lost too much money on the Fergana horses. Fortunately, the chances of the mares getting pregnant were relatively high. If they could successfully give birth, the losses on the northern borderline would be even. After breeding and breeding for 3 to 5 years and training them into powerful warhorses, they would be able to recoup their previous losses. What about now? The pregnant mares that had been carefully taken care of like gold were sick, and the condition was so serious that even the veterinarian could not save them. The mares died, and the fetus in their wombs could not be saved. They had lost a mare of good bloodline and a colt with more potential. Thinking of this loss, the owner's heart was about to break. Before he could recover from this blow, the slaves in another area came to report that there was another pregnant horse that was seriously ill. What? The world spun, and even the owner's voice changed. After a while, he resisted the urge to roar and smash things. He hurriedly said to the vet, "Go and take a look." It was the same illness. Seeing the second sick mare, the owner's heart sank, and he quickly said, "Check all the pregnant horses." It was obvious that the disease of the Fergana horse had spread to these mares. If it was discovered early, they might still be able to save it. However, the symptoms during the incubation period of the horse plague were mild. At most, there would be some mental exhaustion. The pregnant horse's mood was not high to begin with, so it was really difficult to judge. In the end, the veterinarian still found 5 sick horses with symptoms, and they were urgently quarantined from the stud farm. This matter once again alarmed the entire royal court of the northern borderline. The king of the northern borderline roared in anger, and his subordinates silently endured the others' verbal attacks. Wise man Wu Liba had previously been shelved by the king of the northern borderline for nearly a year because he opposed the extravagant atmosphere. The king of the northern borderline could indeed listen to advice, and he was ambitious, but deep down, he was still a man of the northern borderline, and he worshipped force more. He was especially disdainful of Wu Liba's wise man and great principles. What was so great about having a glib tongue? In addition, he had a temperament that liked to enjoy and indulge in extravagance. Wu Liba opposed the extravagant atmosphere of the northern borderline aristocrats, and wasn't that the same as controlling his daily behavior? In the past year, Wu Liba had been given the cold shoulder by the king of the northern borderline, and was even berated from time to time. However, the king of the northern borderline's brain was still there, and he did not do anything too overboard. He only let Wu Liba relax his work. Now, in the face of these dangers, he thought of this good helper again. "Do you have a plan, my dear subject?" Wu Liba thought for a while, and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, your subject thinks that we should be more ruthless and abandon those pregnant horses." When the king of the northern borderline heard this, he almost fainted in anger. He asked with all his sincerity, and the other party gave him such a lousy idea. Abandon all the pregnant horses. Why didn't they just go to heaven? The Fergana horses that Shalon bought had already cost them 10 million strings of coins. Those mares were also warhorses with the best bloodline in the northern borderline. Although they were not as expensive as the Fergana horses, they were still worth 30 to 50,000 strings of coins, or even more. The total number of mares that were successfully pregnant was more than 1,500, and the number of mares that were not pregnant was 2 to 3,000. If all the mares that had been touched by the Fergana horses were to be slaughtered, the loss would be so great that it would be heartbreaking. Get lost. After catching his breath, the king of the northern borderline was so angry that he grabbed something beside him and threw it at Wu Liba. What kind of lousy idea was this? The 19 Fergana horses had already cost them a huge loss of 10 million strings of coins, and those mares were also worth 40 to 50 million strings of coins. In addition to the foals of the Fergana horses in their bellies, if they were to abandon all of them, the 3 tribes of the northern borderline would suffer a loss of 70 to 80 million strings of coins this time. Which of the mares that could be kept as breeding horses were not the cream of the crop? Now that they were all killed, how many elites would the warhorses of the northern borderline lose? Wu Liba was hit squarely, and his neatly combed small braids became messy. He did not say a word and bowed in silence. He also knew why the king of the imperial court was so angry. The loss was simply too great. But he had a hunch that if he did not do this, perhaps the loss in the future would be even greater. However, the king of the imperial court would not agree to his suggestion, and the owners of the major horse farms would not agree to it either. The king of the northern borderline ordered the horse farms to keep the news under wraps so that the determination of the warriors of the northern borderline would not be shaken. At the same time, he ordered his men to quickly get rid of the sick horses and treat them, trying to recover as much of the loss as possible. After a while, his hair had turned quite a lot white. However, the insects and flies that had been feeding on the corpses of the sick horses had already spread, and it would be difficult to suppress them again. Among the sick horses, 9 out of 10 died of illness, and the remaining 1 survived, but the foal in its belly had also died in its belly. The bad news was far from over. Not only did the pregnant horses show signs of illness, but even the foals in the horse farms were having problems. During those few days, the horse farms of the northern borderline were in a state of panic, and the royal court of the northern borderline was filled with all kinds of angry roars from the king. The horse farms were heavily guarded, and not a single word leaked out. The spies that Jiang Pingji sent did not find out the specific situation in the horse farms, but to her, this bit of information was enough. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.